All right. So Zeta, you said?
Yes.
All right. So yeah, she's just a lot.
Right.
Like nothing more than a lot.
Right.
You know,
I don't think she's ever had any structure.
right. And that's exactly where we go. Which is when we're dealing with a situation like this, what she needs is boundaries.
Right.
Right. I talk about the concept of the positive negative elements of training, because whenever we get talking about the motivation principle, we're going to talk about the fact that we need to use both of them. In fact, that's really the beginning of the conversation. Hey, nope. The beginning of the conversation is that we do not neglect positive or negative in any situation. Not necessarily in any situation, but not in any program. Like every dog is going to need a certain amount of both. It's not really possible to not do one or the other. Like there's going to be a combination of both no matter what, just by virtue of the way that life is. So when you have a dog like her problem is she gives herself too much permission. With too much permission, generally you work a little bit more on the negative end, right? Because we're putting boundaries. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be harsh or anything to her, but we need there to be a boundary because she doesn't feel like there are any.
Right. I call it Zeta's world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we just it needs to be understood that it's not Zeta's world.
Right.
That she needs to
cohabitate.
She needs to have some sort of an area where she needs to restrain herself, because that's where the anxiety ends up coming. Nope. That's where the anxiety ends up coming in with dogs like this, and we don't forget that this is anxiety as well.
Right.
But her anxiety is like, like I'll talk to people about the idea of like, there's a psychological exercise. You go to somebody and say, okay, hey, play a game with me. And they'll go, oh, okay. And then you go, okay, you go first. And then they all of a sudden get tense. There's just like, what happens? You get frozen with the infinite amount of opportunity, right? It's like there's too much going on. And whenever you deal with that with a dog like her, she is basically trying all things all the time.
Right.
But what ends up happening is that ends up being a state of anxiety with her, because she doesn't know what produces what, right? And that's where I talk to you about, how to communicate and how to instruct.
Zeta,
don't you on my leash? While I have her on the leash, let me give her the instruction.
Okay.
That way it doesn't end up confusing, and also that we don't expect anything extra of her that she is not reasonable to expect yet, because we're going to be having plenty of conversation, and I do this every time. Is I'll take the dog and figure out what is going on with him, and I kind of read them and feel them out while we're doing this. Okay. Good girl. That's good. There's a good girl. Oh. So one of the things with her, we're going to want to make sure that we lead with energy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that when we're the dominant animal, right? And dominant doesn't mean we're the aggressive animal. Dominant means that the dominant animal is the one who all the energies migrate towards. If I show up in a situation and I decide that I want to be calm, and that's what I choose to be, and I have the ability to continue to make myself calm despite the fact that everybody else is moving in other directions. If I have a dominant presence, everybody will become more calm. If I don't, and I'm not the dominant animal around there, then people will continue on about their life, and it just won't make any difference, right? And so we want to think about that, because dominance is, again, it's not like I'm the aggressive person. I'm the one who's going to hammer everybody down. Dominance is, like my grandmother at 93 is a very, very, very dominant person, and she's sweet as pie, and she's never raised, my Aunt Christine, who's in her 50s now, has said that she's never raised her voice to her ever in her entire life. So we're not talking about that as dominance. Dominance is just the kind of person that everybody migrates towards, the people who have a way of influencing a situation, You know, all of those things end up, you know, whoever people follow, you know, and you don't have to be like a stand-up comedian is very dominant because they know how to control the mood of the room.
Right.
Very well. So, we realized that that's the case. It would be better if you didn't pull on it. That's right. That's right. What is? What's up? What's up with your lip? What's up with your lip? Huh? Nope. Nope. Hey. So, given what I'm seeing with her, is first of all, we don't want to continue to just pull on her throat all the time because there can be some problems with that. But we're gonna have to. She's gonna have to have. You're gonna have to have a little bit of firmness with her because I mean, and it's not a.
No, I'm not a loud person at all, and loudness really agitates Nova. Like if you raise your voice, she'll bolt to the other room like she's petrified. So we don't do loud here, but I have had to get loud with her so much that she's going to hide all the time.
Right.
You know, and I don't want that energy. So we like chill and quiet.
So good news is loud doesn't help really much at all. It can. It is a tool to be used in certain circumstances, but it's not necessarily anything that we really want to use almost at all. Because it's bugging me. My camera is a little wonky here. Let's see if that works. Much better.
Where's it?
When we use volume, we use it because hey, come here, settle down. We use volume because we don't have any other tools.
Right.
Right? And so now if we find ourselves using volume very often, that means that we're not doing our job in making sure that we're actually communicating in the ways that we should. So, like the snap like that is a shock to snap you out of a mindset, and that's a lot of times what people use that, and that's where people will get results when the dog is not actually learning anything. It's because they just get startled out of whatever behavior they're doing, and they stop doing it because they were startled, not because they made a decision to stop doing it.
Right.
Right. And so that's where we want to. Pay attention to that difference, and so when we have to use volume, it's because we don't have a leash. It's because we don't have the ability to guide with an implement or body language or any of these other things. It's because the dog's over there and the car is also over there, and we need to make sure that they come back, and we don't have any tools, right? So we don't. So you can keep the quiet house, like that's for sure. So. Hey, you're being a lot.
He's a lot.
You're being a lot.
She also has not ran yet today. I just got home from work and got her out of the kennel.
So that's good, because I don't want to see it in an altered state. I want to see it as it is normally. And I will let you know that the running is not a bad thing in total. But I think we talked about it at church the other day that running will work off a day's worth of energy just so that they can have more the next day.
Right.
So it's not an effective thing for keeping energy down. What an effective thing for keeping energy down is just to teach them how to manage the energy that's in their mind, and then when they can do that and they learn to do hard things like sitting still, you know,
right. No, obviously.
then it will wear their mind out. It'll wear their mind out, and then the body will follow, and so you'll end up actually having less energy output over a day.
Right.
You know, as far as physical energy, because we want to burn that off in the mind as much as we can, and it does actually burn the calories. Like it's a normal thing. You know, like whenever they do chess tournaments, they'll take heart rates on them. They're at like 185 beats per minute for like 3 straight hours.
Oh, wow.
They're burning like 10,000 calories an hour.
Holy cow.
Sitting perfectly still, right? So we don't think that a good mentally exercised dog generally ends up being a very fit dog anyway. So now, just before we get too far into it, I want to talk about the fact is, like, I did put this around the neck. The harness is going to be a horribly hard thing for you to be able to get any sort of control over the dog.
Okay.
It's not a good training tool.
Okay.
At all. No, it doesn't hurt anything. Like, there's nothing wrong with it being there. I'm just saying that, like, if that's what you want to use as far as being able to have control over the dog and everything, it really gives the dog maximum amount of control and gives you minimum. And so there's no directional, because if you hook up to this, because we could hook up to it, and she's going to become way harder to deal with pretty much immediately. Because I can't control her direction. Like, all of this is happening and she's not moving.
Right.
And she could move and I could do nothing. Nope. Hey. Thank you. Hey. But there's no way of controlling. Now, if you control the neck and the head, then you have if you have control of the head, the body follows, right? And so we do want to do whatever we do up here on the neck, so that we can control it. Now, if we just run it like a slip lead like this, we're going to stand, but especially by the time it gets through to her, we're going to stand, there is the possibility of doing some damage through repetition. You know, it's because there's continuous pressure and impact on the neck, and we don't want to do that. And so, the unfortunate thing for some people, because a lot of people don't know how to process this, is that the tool that really saves the neck and keeps it humane is the one that looks the worst, right? And so these prong collars look awful. They look like torture devices. But the idea behind them is they constrict a little bit at a time, and they constrict around the entire circumference, and so you don't actually end up hurting the dog. You don't do any sort of damage to the dog, and you still have all the control. And they are less pleasant, for sure, and so the dogs tend to respond to them a little bit better. So what I would suggest, and I think to save your back and you know, your frustrations and all of these different things, would be to use a tool like this.
Yeah, I work 6 days a week. I don't have the energy for any.
Right. Well, so what we need to do is we need a halt on the dog. Like, we need to teach her, stop. We're done with this right now. You need to be still. And this is probably one of the quickest tools. Now, it needs to be sized properly. If you are the kind of person that starts feeling bad for the dog and wants to loosen it up by adding more links to it and everything, you'll end up hurting the dog. So I'll have to, you know, I'll talk you through that. But the idea, you okay with me putting one on her? Okay. So we want to first start with it at its full length.
Okay.
Right? Pull it taut. Since this is just barely, whenever I got it really tight, it's barely stretching to that one. I'm going to go one more link out, and we'll take these two out.
Don't want it too tight.
Yeah, we don't want it to have full-time pressure. We just want it to we want it to not slide around on the neck, but we don't want it to have, like, pressure all the time. You should be able to twist it around and everything like that. Settle it down. You're a good girl. You're a good girl. You're a good girl. And then I'm going to take this tag off. But now here's the deal. The first time we actually enact this, some dogs don't know how to deal with it. Now, so the idea is I put pressure on it, the dog doesn't like it, they release the pressure. Now, some dogs will try to get out of the pressure. Hey, quit. Some dogs will try to get out of the pressure by having a conniption and spinning and rolling. Well, she's a roller when she tugs. So whenever we do this, we have to understand that if she starts having a rolling fit or fighting or any of this stuff, and she starts to try to freak out to make this stop, that if we feel bad for her and loosen up, we've just programmed the brain to know that if I flip out, I'm going to get it. This is going to make it stop.
Right. Well, we don't feel bad. She needs to learn.
Well, that's fine. I just generally do it first because a lot of people don't always have the stomach. Right. Now, so that being said, whenever I put this on her, if she does have a conniption, don't be too worried about it.
She'll be fine.
These collars are made to not be able to hurt the dog if they're sized properly. Now, if you put extra links in, then you can absolutely hurt them. If it gets to the point where it closes all the way up and you're just pulling 4 prongs right into their trachea, you can really hurt a dog. But if they're sized properly, but you see the still, right? Because squeeze is a whole different, it's a whole different ball game.
Pressure in that one spot.
This is pull, this is squeeze.
Right.
And squeeze does a different thing to the brain, is it makes the brain want to stop. do you got your pouty face on?
Yes.
Nope.
She's like, why, Mom?
Nope.
Why?
Hey, settle it down. So now, when we have a tool like this, we can become very gentle a lot of times with the dog. Now, in fact, you probably will need to be pretty gentle at the very beginning, because sit. This will make it to where your fingertips with her. And with a big, strong dog like her, you want a tool that gives you fingertip control.
Right.
And so that gives us the ability to slow her down, stop her mind, stop whatever behavior it happens to be, so that we can just reset and learn a different one, right? And so that's the purpose of the negative feedback with the dog, is not to punish them ever. It's never a matter of punishment.
Right.
The only thing that you could possibly punish a dog for is if it was something that they absolutely had full well knowledge of that they were doing wrong, and they also understood what it is that you're referring to.
Right.
And dogs really don't have the capacity to do that, like almost at all. Now, like my dog Cinch, they can develop the capacity over time. My dog Cinch can probably do that because he's had $500,000 worth of training, plus, you know, he's been doing this for years, plus he's also top tier intelligent dog, you know, breed. So we want to keep that in mind. So we really almost always want to be dealing with the dog in the moment, right? And so if we can just stop a behavior, because it's like, hey, nope, that's the wrong one, let's try a different one, and then you try the different one, we reinforce that, then we end up, I mean, like, that's training. It's really, pretty simply, that's training. So
The look on your face.
Sit. And if we can get the mind to stop bouncing off the wall, the body will stop bouncing off the wall, and so we can get attention. And so now we're actually having progress, and whereas before, I mean, like you see, that there was, there was a 1 second transformation whenever we got it on, and she could tell that it gave pressure. It did, and it's not like, this isn't shutting a dog down. There's people out there that'll think that it is. What it's doing is just being effective, right? So, in order to take that level of mind and get it toned down, we're going to have to do like full-on restraint, or we'll have to start getting harsh with her, or we'll have to start getting really loud with her. And there's all sorts of different, truthfully negative things, you know, and harmful things. Sit. 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 That's fine. We're gonna learn to listen to the cues, whether the ant's there or anything else. Alright, there you go. Good girl. And she'll find out that whenever, if she does what it is that I ask her to do, then I quit bugging her.
Right.
So, let's talk about the principles. Principles are motivation, timing, and consistency. And whenever you understand the 3 of those, you can do anything you want with dog training. Like, everything that happens in dog training is a matter of these things. And honestly, any communication that you have with almost any person in the world, any live being, motivation, timing, and consistency is a great framework to be able to look at these things through. So we want to motivate our dogs, positive and negative, both, in combination. When a dog gives themselves too much permission, we're using negative to reduce the amount of permission that they give themselves. Whenever they're not giving themselves enough permission, over here, case in point, then we want to be encouraging them with uses of positive. Now, every dog is going to have some of both. Some are just going to tilt a little more one way, some are going to tilt a little more the other way. And so we do always want to balance. When the pendulum swings to the right of balanced, it's going to be a corrective process. If it's to the left of balance, it's a rewarding process. So we just understand that that's the thing. If you think about There's the fad of positive only training out there, which is a lie. It doesn't exist at all. It's not real. But if you only give a dog positive, you actually are horribly negative and neglectful to the dog in the first place, because they end up staying in a state of confusion. And confusion and anxiety are the same thing as pain. Even if it's a bouncy, happy anxiety like this, this brain right here still is feeling pain. It's the same emotion to them. So we want to settle the confusion, settle the anxiety that's behind it, and then the dogs are like, okay, like now I can actually relax. Now I can, and my brain is not eating itself alive because it's trying to figure out what
to do,
what the heck to do. Yeah. So, and then we can start to reinforce them with things that will help to settle the mind. When you're giving positive reinforcement, we tend to use one of two different things. The first one is dopamine, which is from food, and we'll go over that. But the one I want to talk about in relation to that is oxytocin, which is you get from physical affection, right? We get from going to the same church. Like that's an oxytocin building process. It is the most powerful anti-anxiety, anti-depression, and anti-addictive chemical that you can have.
Nova's allergic to everything under the sun, so we don't do a lot of treats.
Right. Well, and that's fine. So. I don't advise a lot of treats anyway.
Okay.
So like it's not. Treats have a tendency to raise the energy.
Yes.
What was that? Treats have a tendency to raise the energy, and so a lot of people don't go through my whole program and they don't ever use treats. Now I'll teach you how. I'll teach you what it is and why we use it. So when we're talking about oxytocin, though, when we're talking about the physical affection portion of this, we want to understand it's like this dog, you can jostle and wrestle and we can do all that stuff with a dog like this, and she does not find that displeasing at all. No. Right? So that's still producing that oxytocin. Now, in order to not, whenever I pop her on this thing, that's a physical touch. It is not doing that. She doesn't care for that. So anything that is not displeasing to the dog that involves physical touch is going to produce oxytocin. And oxytocin is your family chemical. It is your security chemical. It says, I'm here, I'm safe, I'm accepted, and I'm loved, right? And so that is the thing that keeps us all, that keeps us all from being addicts, is we need to be a part of a group. We need to have a purpose. We need to do all of that stuff. I'm speaking about myself because I've had addiction issues in the past. And so now what it says to dogs, though, is yes, I am part of the pack, which it helps with their security. But what it says to the dogs most specifically is like, I like the state that you're in, right? Because like I can grab a hold of her like this, and she's going to wrestle play with me, right? Because she loves it. She's fine, Now I could do the same thing with her, and that's not going to fly.
Right. She's going to look at you and go, "What are you doing?"
Well, or she'll bite me or whatever. Right. Like that's fine.
At this state, yeah, she would bite you.
And so my dogs, either of the males and the female can put their teeth on each other in the living room and wrestle, and it's perfectly fine. Whereas the two males together cannot be calm around each other, and if either one of them gets really a whole lot too close, there can be issues, right? And so it's not the idea of biting that is the offense. It's how close can you be to me with a certain energy, right? And the female is, first of all, very secure, and she has no issues with the two of them, and neither of them have an issue with her, and so everybody's always calm. Right, but the males, like one of them's Jelly Sandwich, and he's been with me for a long time, and he was the only male for a long time, and now he's not. Right, and he's not happy about it. So they actually, at this stage in life, because they don't have as much time at home, they stay separate pretty much all the time. So, but it's not the action of biting that is the problem. It's how close can you be to me with that energy. Right. So if you don't have the right energy, you can't bite me, you can't even stand next to me, you can't do anything. Like, that's wrong. So scale that up all the way to the point of touch. In order to be touching another animal, like everybody has to be very, very, very calm. You know, like they have to be in a good state of mind. They can't be anxious or fidgety or any out of balance way. They can't be that. So whenever we do give physical affection, we're saying that you, in the state that you're in, are in an acceptable state, right? You have a good energy. I like it. And that's the kind of energy I want more of. And oxytocin, the chemical in your brain, will actually produce the dog more of that type of energy. So you can take the dog who is the craziest and most rambunctious in 1,000 and turn it to the biggest couch potato in 1,000 in about 6 weeks. And I can do it in like 3, right? Just by choosing when you pet the dog, right? So if she is in a state of like, you know, all of that, we don't touch that in any sort of pleasing way. Right. Because then we're lying to her and telling her that this is what we want. And we're doing it even subconsciously. It's like we're hypnotizing her to give us exactly what we don't want. And so she's not even aware of it. Right. Because oxytocin doesn't happen quick. It builds up over time. Just increases the chances of that particular energy. But as she starts to see that this right here is where I get my love and affection, this is the state that I'm in whenever I get love and affection, her body will not hardly be able to help producing more of that state. Right? And so that's going to be the biggest thing that's going to make a lot of difference to you. And with a dog like her, like you can pat on him, you know, like you can wrestle with him, you can play with him, and all these things are good. But we want to just make sure that whatever state of being, now that could be the state of being on top of that chest. It could be the state of being on top of this couch. It could be the state of being relaxed. It could be the state of being playful. It could be the state of being submissive. It could be the state of being dominant and aggressive. Whatever it happens to be, whatever's happening in that moment that we pet, that we touch, is what's going to be encouraged. So, especially with a dog like her, my goal is to only pet her whenever she's calm. Right? And as soon as she decides to not be calm, so like I pet her and she starts to feel good about it and everything, and then she goes and starts getting this wiggle going, and then the hand comes away. Okay. And if she gets even more rambunctious and it's causing her to actually do actions that are pulling her out of that state of mind and everything, then she'll actually hit the end of the leash, which is the negative end. The negative produces cortisol, stress chemical, not a huge big deal. Everybody needs stress in their life. It's not a bad thing to have stress. If anybody who tells you that. Now, you don't want to have chronic stress. Right. The chronic stress of I have no idea how life works, that's toxic. But like, somebody pinched me, like, I mean, I guess I probably remember getting a specific bee sting whenever I was younger. But like, it doesn't matter. Right. It doesn't matter. Right. You know, it's not locked in my system. So it's better to have stress in a very short burst, acute thing. You know, there's a very, like, it's we're fine, and we're very not fine, and then now we're fine again. Right. That is healthy. That's called working out. It's called a job. It's called, I don't know, sometimes medicine, you know, does that. So we just go ahead and let that correction happen. Get past it. You know, stop the behavior, show a better example by demonstrating ourselves. If I want a different energy from her, she starts getting rambunctious and everything, and I do correct her and everything, I'm going to be still and steady myself. And she'll go, whoa, what happened? And she'll look at me, and she'll see that I'm calm. She'll be like, oh, okay, well, let's be that way. Maybe that'll help. Maybe that'll get him off my case. And then she does, and then I pet her and say, that's what I was looking for. The end. So that's really the big thing with energy control. Okay? And now, I have a tendency to do these things kind of subconsciously, you know, which is why I can give presentations and do it. But it'll take some focus from you at the beginning. And it's one of those things that we do in the moment, which we'll get to that in a minute. So, we do positive and negative. Nope. Oh, we didn't talk about the dopamine. When it comes down to food, food is there. The reason that we have dopamine when we eat food is because it causes us to feed ourselves again. Because the longer we go without eating, actually, the less hungry we get. A lot of people don't understand that, but that's true. That's what fasting is. Day 3, you're not hungry at all.
Right.
Right? So you got these hormones that say, hey, it's time to eat at certain times a day. So if we move past them, we would never feed ourselves. And like as all animals would die if it wasn't for dopamine as a matter of producing the drive to go get something, because that's what it is. I mean, and again, whenever you talk about the idea of like addiction, like the construction worker on the way home from work is drinking beer, right? In the truck, right? And the reason for that is because the first day on the job, everybody went out and celebrated afterwards, and they went to the bar and they had beers, right? And it was just sort of like, hey, welcome to the crew and everything like that. And then that trigger kept on moving further and further and further back, because dopamine is anticipatory. It's when you're about to get into a situation where you're pleased in some way, it tells you what actions to do. So dopamine causes actions, right? That tells the brain which actions to do that are going to produce more food. Quit. Stop. All right. So you see where I put the pressure on, and then I wait for something, and then I let the pressure off, right? That's called pressure off technique. And a lot of times, so say she had a conniption about this in the beginning. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it at the same level and let her fight against it for a minute until her mind decides to quit fighting, so that she can understand that the fighting is not what made it stop. Hey, quit. You turd bucket.
I call her my toddler.
Yeah, she's very toddlerish.
She's a toddler.
And that's okay. We get past that pretty quick.
I tell her she'll grow up, it'll be fine.
So if I release that pressure, then she would realize that flipping out is what releases the pressure.
Right.
If I just hold it and wait, it makes her stop and think about, why on earth is this happening? What do I need to do to change it? And then she'll make a choice. And if it's the right choice, then I release the pressure, and then that's it. And so that's one tool to get exercises done. So, but anyway, with the dopamine, whenever you give food, it'll cause dopamine to trigger on whatever action happens just prior. Right? So food helps you remember actions.
Gotcha.
That's the key. That's the thing that they don't tell you, is they're like, oh, they're being good, give them food. The thing of being good is a state.
Right.
Right? Being, because you're not doing.
Right, you're just existing.
You pet for being.
Right.
You treat for doing, if you want to. You can also pet for doing as well, because that could be being obedient. It could be being submissive. It could be being any number of different things. If I've asked you to do it and then you do it, you're being obedient.
Right.
So you can pet for that too. It just doesn't work as sharply and quickly, right? So that's the idea. And so,
I'm sorry. This is real weird, because this is the longest she has not been all up in my bubble since December when I got her.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, great. And a lot of that we owe to the collar.
Right.
Because it functions. Now, you take a dog like this, and when we started off having just the slip lead on, and she was coughing and hacking. Like, I heard her a couple times, and she was actually having some problems,
right.
From that, and that's why I wanted to switch as quickly as possible, because there's no need.
Yeah, you can tell that the other one was uncomfortable.
So number one, it works because they don't like it as much, but it also works because it works differently. It's a squeeze as opposed to a press, you know, and that causes the brain to react differently, because dogs have what's called an opposition reflex. That means wherever you pull on them, they will pull against it. So if I grab on her foot and pull, most of the time, a dog, if I really pulled on their foot or their tail, she'll pull against my tail. She'll pull against whatever way I'm pulling her. And that's a survival thing, because if something bites you and grabs a hold of you, you pull.
Right.
You just do. It doesn't matter. If you get into the rose bush and you feel that stuff pulling on you and everything, you don't just stay there and die. You pull your way out, you get a couple scratches, you live another day.
Right.
Right? And so, but when it squeezes, that causes you to stop. And that's why whenever a mother scruffs their puppies and everything, it squeezes all the way around the neck and the puppy goes like this. And yeah, granted, whenever you're a little deprived of air, you'll do that too. But the way that the brain actually, the reason that it works with this is because it's the same thing. She's not choking in any way, shape, or form. So, so pull to stop, especially upward, because it's like there's nowhere to go. But if we had just a leash on and I pulled back, she would just pull against it indefinitely, essentially. You know,
Right.
and that's just because she's a normal, healthy dog. Like it's not a problem. It actually means that she's built well.
Right.
Right. It just doesn't always work well with what it is that we're trying to accomplish. So back to the lecture portion. Motivation. We want to motivate positive and negative. We want to do it according to the dog, meaning what that dog likes and what this dog likes are two completely different things. So I can reward this one with touch. I probably cannot reward that one with touch at this point because at this moment that makes her anxious.
Right.
Right? So we want to make sure that we understand that if I find it pleasurable or not pleasurable, if I think of it as a correction or a reward or anything like that, it doesn't matter. It matters what they think about it. Right? My dog Cinch, his favorite game in the world is punch in the mouth. Because he's kind of like this one. Right? It's like you could and she's gonna have a good time with it, you know? And like we've gotten to the point where like I get him, you know, and he loves it. But he's a blue heeler.
Right.
He's bred to get kicked by cattle.
High energy,
and want to keep working.
And
they're
high drive,
super hard-headed dogs.
Please,
yeah, he's like an MMA fighter. Like that's just the temperament that he's got. So, but if I punched all of the dogs as a matter of reward, I would be disbarred. You know, like I'm not allowed to do this anymore.
You're never gonna call again.
Right. So, so that's where I'm getting at with that. This is like we want to make sure that whatever it is that we're doing is rewarding to that dog, and we want to make sure that we get rid of any ideologies of like, oh, you know, oh, dogs love sticks. Well, no.
Not all dogs.
And not all situations with sticks. It's like if she is loving stick. But, so, like, this is generally a good deterrent for a lot of dogs. But I mean, like, I can get all up in her business and she don't really care.
Right.
In fact, she'd probably taste it. She'd probably play with it. Nope. If most dogs avoid it, she doesn't. So therefore, it's not a really terribly effective tool.
Right.
You know? And it's not an effective correction. So whatever we do, we want to do it to her as an individual, not as a blanket thing. And that's where, again, positive only or any of these ideologies of like, oh, correcting a dog with an e-collar is just bad and wrong. You know, it's like, no, it's not.
Right.
It's a tool for a particular situation.
I used a shock collar to train Nova because she was very aggressive when people would walk up to my vehicle. And I wasn't just gonna not take her anywhere.
Right, for sure. Yeah, and there, dude. I mean, how many aggressive dogs have I worked through with e-collars? You know, and it's like the dog, when they're aggressive, is almost always a super scared and anxious dog.
Right.
Almost always, almost 100%. And so you using an even more negative, even more potentially harsh type of thing with those kind of dogs seems counterintuitive. But I mean, when we understand what it is that we're actually dealing with. Do you mind not chewing on my leash? Hey! Come here. Don't chew on my leash. Good girl. Good girl. Give me this dog. Give me this dog. So, according to the dog, positive and negative according to the dog, according to the situation, because being able to keep her calm and under control in this living room will have a certain amount of difficulty. You go out into the world where real things are happening, it could become more difficult or it could become less difficult depending on the situation. Most dogs in their living room, it's the easiest to get them to behave. You just, it requires the smallest amount of effort, smallest amount of impact and everything like that. So we want to keep in mind that a lot of times, whatever it is that we learn in a quiet space requires a little bit more intensity as we go into a more exciting thing.
No, we like to hike. We like to go do things.
For sure. And so while you're doing that, you don't assume that that is going to be the same thing as here. And so getting her to stop doing something that she really, really, really wants to do is going to require a lot more negative. Mm-hmm. Getting her to do something that makes her really, really anxious is going to require a lot more positive. Right. So that whole spectrum just keeps working back and forth. According to the dog, according to the situation, then we also need to think about what the situation will become. Again, we talk about my grandmother. She's 93 years old, and she's got a walker and all that stuff, and she's a precious woman, and I love her to death. But I love also wrestling with pit bulls, mm-hmm. right? And I have one. I've got lots of big bully dogs at home, and I love wrestling with them and playing with them. And I love it when they jump on me, and I love it when they're just all up in my face and everything. But if I allow that to happen, and the dog knows it's okay with me, but doesn't understand how to distinguish, don't do that to grandma.
Right.
Then me not teaching the dog not to jump, and not teaching it a rule that is understandable of why not to jump, we lose grandma.
Right.
Right. And then so we do positive and negative according to the dog, according to the situation, according to what the situation will be mm-hmm. to the future. And so that way we do grandma and everybody else the service of saying that jumping is not allowed unless you're invited, because that's a rule a dog can understand. You know, it's like if I've taught a dog not to jump and then I pat on my chest, like the dog jumps on me mm-hmm. because I've given them an invitation, and it's obvious that that's what I'm wanting in that moment. But if I'm not patting on my chest and inviting you to do that, then you do not do that, and then they can learn through that repetition that's, hey, quit. They can learn through that repetition that that's the characterization of the rule, is that this is something that I can do only when invited.
Right.
Plain and simple. So that's motivation. Now, when it comes down to the negative element of it, I mean, you can do pretty well with just a leash and a collar. Mm-hmm. Like, you can do a lot. There's a lot of things that can be communicated. But I have a tendency to want to use body language more than anything, because it's the language that they speak with each other. Mm-hmm. So if I want her to go this way into this hallway and stay there, then I will say this with my body, right? So I lead her that direction, and if she decides to come back, I give the body language. Now, at the very beginning, this right here is a whole lot of exclamation point mm-hmm. on that language. But really, this right here is what I'm saying.
I do hold up my palm whenever I tell her to wait.
Yeah, and you can do it with the palm, you can do it without the palm, you can do it with just the body. But the key is that you can do it kind of stepping in. But these are all things that will eventually make better in being able to instruct the dog on what it is that we want. Now, that being said, you're dealing with a dog that is very happy to argue and push through things. Mm-hmm. So we need to, at some point, be able to get enough respect from her to be able to get her to listen, to know that whenever we give the motion and the instruction, that an actual enforcement of that motion is coming directly afterwards.
Right.
And if she doesn't follow through with it, if she doesn't do the things that we're asking, that there is somebody who is coming to make her do it. Mm-hmm. Right? And so that's where you see me stop 20 times in a row mm-hmm. to let her know that if she tries to break this plane, I'm coming to enforce that she doesn't. And then as soon as she's taking care of that for herself, I continue to let off. And that continues to work as long as I don't lose track of what it is that I'm telling
Right.
her. Free, come on, big girl. And then whenever I give her the instruction to be able to quit doing it. So using that body language is always a good thing, and it makes things very clear. And we can say things like, I want you to stay over here until
No.
I've stopped, or anything like that. And we can get these things very clear. Like if I want, is that chest sturdy? Do
Yeah,
they get up?
that's theirs.
I
Yeah.
figured that was the
That's
case.
their window seat.
Right. So, you know, like being able to instruct for her to get up on the chest, climb. I can use that sort of, nope. Come on, climb. Good girl. That's good, girl. So this is the exercise that you could talk through all exercise teaching with just this, and there are some videos up on my YouTube page where you can actually see me going very quickly. Hold on. Did I don't know why it has done that. You gonna stay? My oh, that's what it is. Camera around.
Yeah, when she frustrates me, I put her up there for me
Nope.
to breathe.
Good girl. So do you generally get her to, like, she understands to be up here and stay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I say wait.
Right.
And she stays.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so one of the things that I generally teach whenever I'm teaching exercise is that all exercises are stays.
Okay.
Like everything is a stay.
Everything
If I
is
tell you to
stay.
walk, it's not for 2 steps. It's until we're done. Right? If I
Right.
tell you to sit, you sit until I've released you. If I tell you to lay down, you lay down until I've released you. Everything. But a lot of people use the stay and the wait, and that actually becomes really tough for the dog to figure out, because we'll teach a sit, and then we'll teach a stay, and then we'll teach the dog to lay down, and then we'll teach a stay, and the dog will sit. Because the dog thinks that stay means sit, because that's what it's doing whenever they're told to stay. Right?
Gotcha.
And so they don't understand the English concept of it, and it's very difficult for us to communicate, don't do anything different. Nope. No, you can, I generally do with the word nope.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but if I teach sit, and then they stop sitting, and I correct them, and I put them back down into a sit and everything, and I do that repeatedly 2 or 3 or 4, 10 times in a row, however much the dog requires, then the dog can understand that until I'm told this FREE word,
Right.
then I continue to do what it is that I was told last. Right? And then all of them become. And now what that does is that puts the impetus on us of, like, when we are doing these things, we only ask what it is that we can enforce. Because dog training is not on the dog.
Right.
It's on us.
Right.
It's always on us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's where you can have a person who's good at it that you can pretty much ensure results from. Right? Is because if I am of good practice and attention enough to always get what it is that I'm asking for, then the dog always understands that if they hear this word, this is what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
This is the behavior I'm going to need to do before I get released from this scenario.
Right.
So, positive, negative, according to the dog, according to the situation, according to what the situation is going to become. We use different kinds of negatives. Whenever you are using a negative, you can correct things like parts of their body, right? So the idea, whenever she starts putting her mouth on me and everything, the reason I grabbed that bottom jaw is because nobody likes being grabbed by the bottom jaw. I don't think it's a desire anywhere in the world for any being, but it also is addressing right where she's offending. So whenever she puts a paw up, it's okay to address the paw, right?
Mm-hmm.
For maximum clarity. And that's one of those situations where, like, slapping at the paw or something like that might offend certain people, but it actually is kinder to the dog because the dog can understand what it is that they're doing wrong right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's where very intuitive, natural body language type of people have great relationships with the dog most of the time is because they just do what makes sense. Dog puts a paw on them.
Right.
You address the paw. You know, whenever we're doing a stay in a situation, a lot of times I'll teach him on a platform that's only about this tall, right? And the dog will put one paw off of the platform. Nope.
She's trying to get a toy.
Oh, you were a stinker. Yes, you were a stinker. You got a toy out. If it falls off, though, you can't get off until I tell you. So, next principle. So that was motivation. And we'll talk more about all of these things as we go on. Next one is timing. Dogs have 1.3 seconds to associate cause and effect. That's it. It's always now. Every moment is always now to a dog. It's not that they don't agree that a past has existed. I don't think they really have much of a concept of a future at all, but they probably have some. But whenever something happens, they're always assuming that it's happening because of what just happened prior. And that's how their predictive function works, and that's how they continue to live in the wild. Is that, like, I smell this smell and then a bear attacks me. Okay, now I know.
They attacked the skunk last night.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, they don't smell that bad.
It was a late night.
Yeah. Did you get the baking soda and the peroxide?
I do tomato juice and then put baking soda all over them and then squirt lemon juice on them.
Yeah.
And it activates the baking soda.
Yeah.
And gets the oil off.
Makes sense. Yeah, no,
She's
I have.
a 3-time offender.
Yeah, I have definitely heard the tomato juice thing and the lemon and the baking soda. My mom has a Dover, and she always used baking soda peroxide. You know, what's the peroxide is the lemon.
Yeah.
Right. And and then Dawn dish soap.
I feel like I did it the cheap way. I feel like peroxide's expensive. No? Is it cheap?
Like 80 cents for one of those pint bottles or whatever. So, and it's like a tiny squirt of Dawn dish soap because you don't need a bunch. So, we're always talking about right now. So, if I reward a dog, they think I'm rewarding them for what they just did. If I correct a dog, they think I'm correcting them for what they just did. So if I need to correct a dog for something, like say she's over there in the kitchen and she starts chewing on something.
She jumps on the counter.
She jumps on the counter. Perfect. And I'm all the way over here. I can't sprint over there in 1.3 seconds and correct her in order to make sure that she understands. And I could, but it's not feasible. It's not a reasonable thing.
Right.
You know, or if she's all the way in the back room and everything and she decides to poop on the floor or something and you come back there, it's like these things need to be done in the moment. Hey. Settle down. I know.
Squirrel or a cat?
I don't know. But, so we need to be able to bridge that time gap, and that's where we use what we call markers. That's where we use what we call markers, right? It's because, like, if you didn't want her to do that and everything, you're giving her a verbal signal that says that what you're doing right now is what I don't want. So if she jumps on the counter over there, I say nope, and then she gets down, and I go over there and I try to correct her after the fact. It's hard for them to understand what it was they're being corrected for. Right? But if I mark it and I get them used to hearing nope right before the correction, then they start to understand that nope is tied to the correction, right? And then there are some things that we start to bridge that time gap where I'll say nope, and if they fix themselves prior to the correction doesn't happen. You know, the correction's like slow in coming, right? And so there's ways to go about doing that. A lot of times with the walk, we'll end up instituting that. So we use that to bridge that time gap. Now, the other good benefit to that is that whenever I do say the nope and the dog stops what it is that they're doing, then I don't end up having to correct them. It's because we don't need near as many corrections in order to communicate as we do rewards. Rewards are about 1/10 as effective at changing behavior as corrections are. Corrections are much, much better at changing behavior. So therefore, they will change it further faster and probably a little bit more recklessly. So what we want to do is we want to keep at least a 10-to-1 positive ratio where things are way more positive than they are negative, so that the negatives are memorable. You know, also, if you just got stupid negative things happening all the time, then the stuff's not that memorable. Mm-hmm. But if nothing as bad has ever happened to you, and then all of a sudden a very mildly bad thing happens to you, and everything, you're like, oh, I'm never going to forget getting stung by that bee.
Right.
You know, it's like, it's just a bee sting. Like, you didn't have an anaphylaxis response and everything, you just got a regular old bee sting and everything, and it sucks, but don't, like, you don't need to write it down on the calendar and celebrate it on a holiday every year.
Talk to everybody that you know about it for 6 weeks.
You don't need to get a therapist or anything like that. But that's the deal. So that whenever you have a dog that has not experienced so much negativity, then the little negatives that we use are nope. Climb. So the timing, you saw that because she's like,
yeah, she was creeping.
And she was almost there, and when the collar tightened was the instant that her toe hit the ground, and that's where we, like, if we're aiming for perfection, that's what we're going for. And so now, whenever I'm talking about the idea of don't jump off of this thing, you know, it's like I can even create a little bit of distance. Nope. I say the word, she hears it, changes her task, and then I let her know that was good, you know, and that's where we get that clarity. Is whenever you have this good communication structure, hey, quit. When you have the good communication structure, where I say good and nope, good before I reward you, nope before I correct you, or good as you're doing the thing that I'm coming to reward you for, nope as you're doing the thing that I would correct you for, that I will correct you for if you don't cease doing it. Right? Then now these words become, number one, the thing that we use for everything in life, you know? So anything that the dog is doing that I don't want it to do, I will say nope, right? Now, in order for that to continue to be effective, like, I have to have the ability of following through. So I can't say nope, oh, I give up.
Right.
Or
say nope and not go correct the behavior.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Or say nope and then wait 4 minutes and then go, oh yeah, I forgot.
Oh yeah.
Kick the dog. You know, like
right.
that's abuse. You know, like because the
dog,
absolutely. Because the dog does not have the ability to understand. It's not even abuse because of the kick.
Right.
It's abuse because
literally cannot associate the two.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like if I all of a sudden started being aggravating to you or nasty to you because of something that you said in the conversation that we had last
3
Sunday,
weeks ago, yeah,
right, and you had said something that triggered me on a political level or something like that and everything, and all of a sudden I start being nasty to you because of something innocuous that happened a long time ago, then that would be just me being a horrible person, right? And you find a lot of that these days.
Oh, absolutely.
And that is legitimately.
Yeah, no,
there's no excuse
you
for
really
it.
do.
So, no.
She's persistent. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I love that in dogs. I love that. First of all, for a professional trainer, it makes it a lot more interesting because I actually have to pay attention.
Right.
There's so many dogs out there that I communicate very nicely and accurately with them once or twice and everything. They're like, okay, I get it.
Right.
And then they're
I'm going to pay attention to you. Yeah.
I guess this is the way I live my life now. And I'm just like, okay, well.
That was a fun 10 minutes.
Yeah, 4 minutes. And somebody gave me $300 for this 4 minutes and everything. And now afterwards, I just got to fill up the time. Yeah. You know? And so that's the idea. We're always talking about right now.
Watch you too.
Yeah.
She's watching for your lead.
Because all of my actions, all of my things that I do have meaning behind them.
Right.
And now she's playing the game of like, let's figure out what this dude's about.
Do. Yeah.
Yeah, what is he about? And that is going to be the thing that makes this dog that has not gone for her run today fall asleep when I leave.
Right.
She's going to sack out. Right. Guaranteed.
I love that.
Right? And it's not because we went and did so much physical exercise, because we exercise the mind where all the energy comes from.
Right.
All energy starts in the mind. If you get up in the morning and you do nothing, you don't have any energy. If you get up in the morning and you go for a walk, you have energy all day. Mm-hmm. Right? So energy is not a limited resource. And as soon as we understand that, then we can really stop focusing on the exercise as a matter of energy.
Right.
You know, and of course everybody does that, and there's no shame in that or anything, but we want to do what actually works, and what actually works is work on the mind. So, this chest with the bed and everything, great. The fact that the actual squishy bed is on top of it, even better, because if we're going to ask a dog to stay somewhere, we might as well make it a place that they actually want, or that they can become complacent to stay there
right.
easier, as opposed to it being the hardest thing right off the bat. It's like we start by making a task doable,
right.
you know? And then, so if we tell a dog, positive and negative, how we feel about whatever it is that they're doing, we do that in good timing, as a matter, you know, inside of that 1.3 seconds, or at least communicate what it is that they're doing right or wrong. Nope. Yeah. So you see, it lesser correction for a period of time. Lesser correction for a period of time was not reducing the behavior, so you kind of got to get a little bit more abrupt. Now, the good news about it is if you have a dog that is not responding to a lesser correction and everything, that means that these corrections are not too harsh for them.
Right.
So
it's
don't
not
get yourself...
It's not offending her.
Right. It's not offending her enough.
Right.
Like, in fact, you might actually be not offending them at all, and you've just distracted them from whatever it was that they were doing. And so now she's got a little bit of that sort of
she's trying to figure it out. She's got the face now.
Right. That's a good girl. That's a good girl. You just got to stop on that leash. Funny. But now, you go for a day, and every time she does that, you give the appropriate amount of correction that actually dissuades her. The leash thing will be over with. Like, almost immediately. You know, like, and it's not that it won't happen ever again, but it'll be a lot harder for it to happen again because she's got built-in deterrence in her brain.
Right.
All of training is installing software in her brain that actually works. And it's not that she's going through and remembering all these things every single time and everything. We're literally starting habits.
Right.
You know, so this is programming. And you can program a dog no more difficulty and with no less consistency than a computer. Computer's got code, and the code works the way a code works, and that's just the way codes work. Right. And so if you put in a code, it's not going to do something different next time. It does the same. Same thing with dogs. You put in the code, and you sometimes got to put it in a bunch of times, because you're more shaping and molding it. But once you get it right, I mean, like code, these things that I'm teaching are the truth, and they work no matter what. You just have to start it from wherever the dog's starting from. Because if the dog's starting from one place, we've been instructed to move them right. If we start from the other place, you've been instructed to move them left. And if you move right when the dog's already too far right, then you don't get where you're going.
Right.
But going right always turns you right. You see what I mean? And that's the idea behind it. Is the dogs are not humans. They're survival mechanisms. They're survival machines. And their brain has two less layers. It only has one layer. It's our emotional layer is their whole brain, right? All of the thing that makes us do weird, crazy stuff is their whole brain, right? And then we have two extra layers that allow us to abstract things and come up with ideas and think of concepts, as opposed to they literally are just living in the moment doing emotional things. And so you can program that base level brain. And it doesn't do any extra conceptualizing. It's just going to be like, oh no, this is the way that life has always happened. So I have no reason to expect that it wouldn't continue.
Right.
Right. That's also why dogs are easier to traumatize than humans, so the human can rationalize things.
Right. You can work out of your trauma. A dog's stuck in theirs.
They can become paranoid a lot easier, but humans can. But a dog, if you do something and I do it 100 times in a row.
Right.
And then and they get a cookie for it 100 times in a row, and then the 101st time and everything, I kick it in the jaw and everything. That's it. The dog's traumatized. It's never going to trust me again because now I just broke their frame of reference.
Right.
So what we're doing in training is giving them a frame of reference. This is how life's going to work. Whenever I say sit, I will make sure your butt goes down, and I will do that until I've told you free. Right. And that will happen every time, the same way. All the way until it works.
Right.
And so whenever we decide to do these things, that's the consistency point. Part number 3, motivation, then timing, then consistency. doing these things, if we tell them what we want, what we don't want in proper timing, and we do that consistently, that's dog training. Consistency is the word is the whole speech. Like, you don't really need to go into a whole lot of detail. Now, there's a lot of detail that can come out of how do we be consistent?
Right.
What sort of things trigger us to point at consistency as the problem? So, like for instance, if you're potty training, the dog goes and potties in the back room and then comes back in here and lays down on the couch, and then you go in the back room and you see the potty and you don't want to chase the dog, so you come right over, you come walking down in here, walk over to the couch and grab them, take them back there and shake their nose into the potty. Now, what you've told the dog is I don't like you on the couch.
Right.
And I'm using the potty to correct you. It'll take 30 to 50 times of doing the same repetition before the dog will figure out I only get corrected when the potty's there. And they'll probably take another 30 to 50 times before they figure out I can prevent the potty from getting there to ensure that I don't have this experience. That's 100 times upwards. Right. 60 to 100 different corrections, bad attitudes, messes on the carpet. That's a whole new set of carpet at least once or twice.
Right.
Before you actually have a trained dog. And it's not that we don't correct after the fact. Still, if we catch it, like if it happens, still correct, still make your point known. But we focus on our consistency, and what we'll do is we'll try to make a situation where the dog never gets to go potty outside of our sight, right? Where we can get, like my mom, whenever she gets a puppy, she literally, in my situation, I would take my belt off and I would put the loop of this thing on my belt and leather myself to the dog.
Yeah.
And then the dog cannot have a potty accident without me knowing.
She's trained to a doorbell.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, and that
because I worked
worked
third
with
shift whenever I got her, and I didn't want to be sleepy when she needed to go out to the bathroom,
right,
and her have accidents because I wasn't awake. So it worked great for us.
Well, and that's good. And as long as that is the thing that you're wanting, there is some questions about whether or not a dog should be telling you what to, things like that, and especially as an adult. If they get to push a button and make the human do things,
it does backfire.
There can be some problems with that. It's not always problems, and some dogs can handle it perfectly fine. You get most golden retrievers that you teach to press a button for something or another, and it makes the human do stuff, they generally don't offend because they're not dominant dogs,
right?
Or they're not disagreeable dogs, and they're generally not troublemaking dogs. They generally are really compliant, easygoing, I want you to be happy with me dogs. And that's just their part, that's just the way their disposition is. But pit bull? No. You can get a real dominant situation from a pit bull. Nope. Climb. Good girl. Good girl. So you see, no cookies, and we're still doing good work. Free. Good girl, yeah. I'm talking with you over here. Thank you. Come here. Sit. Nope. Sit. Yeah. Sitting on the feet is imposing. It's a little rude, but it is a value statement from a dog very often. Not every time, but very often. In the animal kingdom, space is respect. Plain and simple, they are exactly the same thing. If they respect you, they give you a space. Unless they find out that in respecting you, that you expect them to take your space, and in which case then that can be communicated, but it's harder to do that. Okay. So if a dog comes into your space prior to your invitation, and it feels at liberty to take your space, it doesn't respect you. Plain and simple. So the very first thing we do whenever we're trying to get a dog to give us some measure of respect is that we start claiming our own space. We have a bubble. Don't. Thank you. She's starting to understand that this is coming. If she bites the leash. Yeah.
Right.
Dude, these things were like $6 at Rural King.
Well,
Great
I've seen them at Roll King.
Great
and
leashes. I've trained
out.
100 dogs with this leash. I guarantee it. Yeah, 100 different
That's
dogs.
crazy.
So they're good. They're good leashes, and I mean most of the dogs bit the leash too. So like,
Right.
they hold up. What was I talking about? I felt like I was on something good. I don't remember. Space. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So first thing we do is we start claiming our own space. So like coming in the door, 100%. Like we start working with the door. Free. The door is my space, right? And so nope. So we start learning. It's my door, and I say that because I put my back to whatever is mine, and I face in at her. I come in and take a little bit of her space, I disrespect her a little bit, in order to let her know that that's what I'm talking about. And this is my door. And then, nope. I use that same nope word that we use, and I do ask that we use nope, N-O-P-E,
Right.
not for any other reason besides what it does to your brain. It's very difficult to get in the wrong state of mind when you use nope as opposed to no.
Right.
I'm sure you can fill in the blanks of why that is.
Right.
Right? It's just our brains are not programmed to learn that nope is an aggressive, it's a very matter of fact thing.
Right.
Right? So, also, whenever it comes down to like sitting down and the dog getting in my space, it's like if you're going to get in my space, it's like you need to have an invitation. And so now that doesn't mean don't invite them into the space. It just means that you don't get to come in prior to being invited. And if you do, then you're going to get some measure of dissuasion and correction or something like that, because my space should be respected, and that's because I value myself. And if I value myself and I am a confident type of character and everything, then they will give some birth if it's important to them. Now, with a pit bull, it may not necessarily be important. Just because I feel that way doesn't necessarily mean that she's going to feel that way. Free. So, when I start, and sometimes you gotta be a little serious about it, especially with a dog
With her.
that loves
Yeah.
even rough attention.
She likes it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. At first.
Nope.
Yep.
And so that's where we start getting that word nope understood. And it always has a meaning with it. And so instead of me just like playing with her with my hand, which might be what she feels is happening,
Right.
I'm letting her know that there is actually something wrong here that I want to stop. So we'll get to that. Well, so we start with that. When it comes down to the couch and stuff like that, no problem with it. Come here. When it's that time, I just invite her. I
Right.
just make sure that she understands. That right there is ruder
Yeah.
than I want, and so there's a certain. But as long as there is a line, then that she won't cross because she understands that I have a value. Then that means that I have a value that's greater than hers in my mind, in her mind.
Right.
Right? And whenever my value is greater than hers, then I have respect. Come on now. Keep on doing that. So the same thing is if I want the space, I take the space.
Right.
You know? I don't want her on my hey. She get too rough with her mouth? Nope. You don't get to be up here if you're not gonna be polite. And those are the boundaries. Now, as soon as you do just a little bit of that, and you do that with some measure of consistency, you set whatever rule. I don't care if the rule is arbitrary.
Nope.
You know?
Nope.
I don't care if the rule's arbitrary. I don't care if it's don't you dare get anywhere near my shoe. Or something like that. It doesn't matter what it is. As long as there's something that you require. And there's a no-fail mission. Like, we do not, like, because I said so, you treat this way. It doesn't
Right.
matter, and the best thing to do is yourself.
Psycho buddy.
Do you need to go outside? Can you go outside and go potty?
Now that collar,
Oh, I was just gonna run her out in the back then.
okay, well, I just don't. I don't want.
She'll run out and pee and come right back.
Okay, I don't want it to get hooked if she's not
Oh,
familiar with
right.
the collar. Then
Good, let's
I
go
don't want
potty.
to get hooked on something.
Go potty out back. Wait.
What are you doing, sweetie? How's it going? You nice girl. You nice girl. Ugh. Can I see you? Can I see you? Okay. She's a good girl. Good girl. Yeah, you a good girl. No.
Coming.
I'm gonna use the restroom.
That's fine. Hey. What are you doing, girl? Sit. Nope. Hey. Come here. Sit. 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 Good girl. What a good girl you are. You're a very nice girl. Nope. Good girl. Yeah, you're getting it already. That's fine. No, we're not done yet. Sit. 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 Mhm. Climb. Good girl. Breathe. Sit. Sit. Nope. Good girl. Climb. Climb. Good girl. That's good. Good you are. Nope. Nope. Climb. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. Sit. Free. Free. Sit. Good girl. Nope. Sit. Good girl. Nope. Sit. Good girl. Okay. Free. Good girl. Yeah. Good girl. Oh. Oh. Climb. Climb. Good girl. Free. Free. Climb. Good girl. Careful. Free. So, thinking about teaching an exercise, which, by the way, that's done with the main portion of the lecture and everything else we'll talk about as we're going through. So if there's some things that you want to touch on, ask questions about, now's a pretty good time for that. If you have anything any way that you want to steer the conversation, goals you want to achieve and everything, talk to me about that. And we can.
Really just boundaries.
Yeah.
Teaching her own self-control.
Uh-huh.
The jumping.
So her self-control is your self-control for now.
Right.
For now. So whenever I'm teaching something, whenever I'm teaching a dog and I'm training a dog, what I'm doing, in essence, is I'm letting them borrow my discipline until they develop their own. You can think about it in terms of that, and that's fine. That's why we have things like a prong collar and everything, which allows me to continue to stay on top of something that I've asked them to do. You know, so if we're doing something like a sit stay or a climb stay or a down stay or anything like that, I keep in mind that this dog is required to continue to do this. And if I don't actually follow through with that requirement, then the dog is learning that this word does not mean that they're required.
Right.
That's the only way they can understand these things is if we do them. The words don't mean anything until there's action to go with them, right? And so if I say sit and the butt hits the ground and I tell them good dog and then they get up and walk off and everything, then I have told them in no uncertain terms that sit means put your butt on the ground and then you're done.
Walk away. Yeah.
Right? Now, if they do that and I correct them and put them back down in the sit over and over and over again until I say the word free and everything, then I am telling them that sit means stay as well. That it's implied in the word. Because these are the behaviors that I do afterwards. And so it's just a trigger. When they hear this, they know I'm going to behave a certain way. And that's what we want to think about all of our commands as. When I say something, that's informing the dog of what I expect. How I'm going to respond to their behavior. If I say nope, and they're focused on something and they continue to focus on it, then I'm going to come get in the way. I'm going to come break their focus in one way or another. Right? But now if sometimes I tell them sit and I expect them to sit and stay, and sometimes I tell them not, how are they going to figure out what the actual word means? Right? We basically what we're saying is that what we're doing is we're saying, hey, I'm telling you to sit, but I don't really mean it because I'm not consistent with what I do. And so in the process of training the dog, we end up having all sorts of benefits to ourselves anyways, because we require ourselves to become more consistent people. So if I tell this dog to climb, it's my job to make sure that they stay on that climb until, and even if it's 25 minutes later, I cannot forget to let this dog out, lest they find out that stay means upwards of 25 minutes, which the dog doesn't know how much 25 minutes is at all. So 25 minutes turns into 12 real quick, and then it turns into 2 real quick, and then it turns into 9 seconds, and then it just doesn't mean anything. And it only takes 2 or 3 or 4 times of the thing breaking before that hour-long stay becomes 0. Right? So we just make the covenant with ourselves. If I'm going to tell my dog to do something, I'm making sure that it happens. Now, in order to do that, you want the equipment. The equipment's the important part. The equipment is not so that I can correct my dog harder. The equipment is just so that I lose almost 0 of the battles, and I do that with the smallest amount of effort. Because if we want to be dominant over an animal, which we do, because it's very important, don't let the language deter you from doing the right thing. But if we want to be dominant over the animal, the more dominant we are over the animal, the less struggle we have getting what we want from it. Right? If you have a hyper-dominant person, people don't even start to challenge them. They don't even begin to. Like my Aunt Jody, she's a very, 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 very dominant person, and she of course picks her battles and everything, and she doesn't require a whole lot of people. But if she decides that she's going to do something, like she'll walk through you.
To get it done.
To get it done.
Yeah.
If she decides that you're going to do it, she will literally just speak in terms of like, it's an inevitability that this is going to happen. And it makes you wonder like whether or not you actually are going to do this thing that she's told you to do that you don't want to. And then you end up finding yourself doing it, and then she praises you like a dog and tells you how wonderful you are, and and boosts you up and everything like that, and then that's it. And none of this is harsh or bad or anything like that. She's just an effective person at gaining the outcomes she wants. She's a phenomenal businesswoman. By virtue of that, she decides that she's going to do something, and she doesn't even let herself not do it. Right? She's disciplined. And she has good ideas, and she makes the right friends, and all of that stuff, and so it makes her very effective. And so I have a lot of respect for her on that. So, but the idea is like she doesn't have to try that hard to get people to get people to do the things that she wants them to do. She's just like, hey, I'm gonna have you go do this. Like that's how that's how she would say. She's like, I'm gonna have you go to the store and grab this thing and then bring it over to this location and everything, and then they're gonna give you this, and then you're gonna bring it back to me. And I'm like, I've got plans, but I guess I don't have plans.
I'm doing this.
That's an arbitrary example that never happened, but that would be, and it's very predominant in the ladies in my family. They have that mentality. It was like, hey, you want to know how you can help me?
Right.
My mom starts conversations out like that all the time. She's like, you know what you could do for me?
So much better than someone who never knows, though.
Right. See, I would much rather deal with dominant people than people who are
undecided.
Yeah.
Undecided is very.
Animals feel the same way,
Yeah.
almost exclusively. If you're a very dominant person, then animals love you. If you're not a dominant person, that does not mean that you're a nice person to the dogs. It means you're a weasel.
Right. No, I can tell you 100% people from my past that are no longer in my life, like she was always super, super weird about. And now I'm like, man, you were telling me something.
Yeah. It's because those non-dominant people are weasels.
Right.
Because there's not anything virtuous about being nice.
Right. There's nothing honorable about their intentions or actions and
well, I mean, the meek shall inherit the earth, and what people don't understand is the meek in Greek means those who have swords and know how to use them, but have them under control.
Yes.
Like they're not waving them around like crazy or everything, but they are people of strength and power and great, I'm sure great violence even most of the time, but they don't use it all the time.
Right.
They have the capacity, but they don't use it. And even a person with a lot of dominance that just doesn't exercise it that often. Like I said,
they have the wisdom to know when to use it.
Jody doesn't press her luck all the time. She doesn't try to get everybody to do everything all the time. But whenever she needs something, we will pretty much always come through.
She knows how to do it.
Yeah, she knows how to do it, and she knows how to get other people to do it.
Right.
And that's fine. There's nothing negative about that. So after a nice. Okay, now watch what happened right there. I hope the camera caught it at least a little bit. But you see what I did when that thing happened? Nothing. I stood still. I watched the dog. If anything were to happen to where she was actually inevitably going to hurt herself, I would have stepped in and done something about it. But in the meantime, it's like that thing flipped all over her and everything, and I just stand here and hold on to the leash. Now, if she'd have sprinted off like a weirdo, like it was the worst thing that had ever happened to her and everything, she'd have hit the end of the collar, and it would have been actually worse for her than that little endeavor that she went through. That's the kind of leading with energy that I talk about. It's like whenever something goes awry, I stay calm. And if I stay calm, then the dogs start to realize that, hey, calm is what we do whenever things like this happen. And if I do that, and it continues to pan out for them, and they don't end up dying horrible deaths that they think they're going to die, then they'll realize that, oh, calm is the way that I solve most of my problems.
Right.
That's going to be huge for her.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a great convenience to you for her. And that's one of those things where we always want to do that. And with the prong collar, it makes a big difference because, like, you can almost completely train a dog by just putting a prong collar on them and just standing still.
I have avoided taking her on hikes because of the pulling, and I have 4 bulging discs in my neck. I can't do that with
this. This is one of those things where, well, I mean, like a lot of times.
Just slip it through and then.
Sometimes I'll do it like this. Which I guess you could do anyway, and you can put that around any number of different things, But like with a lot of times, what I'll do is I will just run my belt through the actual loop itself, everything. And now you don't have to though, because we have this situation. First of all, don't do that. Right. Don't do that. Not a good thing. You hold with an open hand this sort of thing, but I'll just grip it one at a time, like this. And then, if you have neck issues, which I do, if you have back issues, which I do, and all of these different things, but I've never had trouble holding onto a dog. And part of that is just because I put my hands to my hip, because I can probably lead a hog on a prong collar with my hand pressed to my hip like this. Once you press it to your hip, you are moving with your center of gravity. And the dog, there's not a dog hardly in the world that can pull me from that position.
Right.
Like, I mean, what is those Siberian, or what are those big gigantic dogs from it's a Central Asian Shepherd. That's the one I'm thinking of. Huge, big, gigantic dogs. I mean, on the wide, like they're bear-sized dogs, and everything. And like if you got them on the right equipment and everything like that, you used to hold it right here. And all these people are doing this number. It's like you're ruining your center of gravity. Put it on your hip. Have the right type of equipment that puts the problem of pulling on them, not on me, and you got no issues. Like, it's it. The game's over. And then you teach a dog to walk with you by disregarding where the dog wants to go continuously for a while.
Right.
If I want to go, I'm going. And I just lead. Now, if I want to be very kind to the dog and teach them an actual word that means, hey, I'm leaving, maybe you should stay with me, which is a heel command or a walk command or something like that, then I'll give them a word that says, hey, this is the way I'm about to start behaving. You're on the leash. I'm going to say the word walk, and then I'm going to walk in a direction. And it doesn't matter which direction.
Right.
Because I might go walk and leave. And if she's paying attention and she stays with me, then she doesn't hit the end of the collar. The next time she's here, if I always turned around and went backwards, she's going to assume that's the case, and she'll turn around and go backwards, and one day I'm going to say walk, and I'm going to walk forward, and then she's going to have a problem. And then at that point she learns, walk means go whichever way he's going. And that's all we want from our dogs. We want our dogs to follow our lead. Our emotional lead, our intellectual lead, our physical motion lead, right? Motion and emotion. Right. I'm probably going to start using that now. Motion and emotion is both ways that we should lead our dog. But then I want to give them the cue saying, "Hey, follow me in this direction." Right. So walk, and then I go, and we just lead. And if she doesn't do it right, the collar trains for you.
Right.
The collar makes it work. If she does it right, she's making it work. And then whenever I stop, I'll do slower, faster, left, right. I will pretty much always go the opposite way she wants to go for the first 10 minutes, just until she starts to understand, hey, I need to stay with him. And if you don't say the word at all, then she'll just automatically follow you, which some people like. Some people really, really, really don't like. My wife would hate that, right? That's not her bag. She gets frustrated.
Right.
The dogs always are paying too much attention.
And sometimes after work, because it's so loud in there all the time, like them being so close, it's like, all right, y'all need to back off. I need 10 minutes.
Right. And so that's the thing. But I'm like, that's that third part of the motivation is motivate for what life is going to become. If I am going to be a person who every so often is going to take the Pink Panther as an example. Kato is the Chinese housekeeper guy. Like he's the head of the estate for Inspector Clouseau. And so Inspector Clouseau comes home to the understanding that Kato will attack him from the shadows at any point in time. That's their training regimen, and it's a game, I guess, or something, but full blown with real weapons, to keep him sharp. And so he has to keep him sharp and everything. But then sometimes in the middle of the show, he comes home because he's legitimately in a hurry and needs a certain item from his house and everything. And now his butler is just full on attacking him in the worst circumstance. We don't do stuff like that. We make sure that there's a cue It says
Right.
that this is something that's available or is not. You know, and the same thing goes with the walking. It's like if I end up, hey, nope. Hey. So when the dog is at the window like this, and there's something, because there's deer right there.
Right.
Right there.
I was gonna say, is it my yard deer?
No, yeah, they're right there.
Yeah.
If I don't want her barking at the deer, which I think is probably a reasonable thing,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I definitely don't want her feeling like the deer don't belong there,
Right.
I claim the deer. Nope. Hey. Right? And so you notice my hand goes between the deer and her, and then I come in this way at it. Because now she's sitting there looking at them, but she's like, I'm not supposed to bark at them because they belong to him.
Right.
Right? If I gain respect from the dog, and then I claim something, it needs the respect that I have earned.
Yeah.
Right? I'm handing my respect off to it. Same thing as if I don't want that turtle messed with, like I'll claim the turtle to the dogs, and then that needs to be the case. Now it'll work as well as it works. You know, like there's a certain amount of like, if I'm not standing over here claiming it continuously, then the dogs are eventually going to get to the point where they're like, I know it's steak in the floor and I'm going to eat it. You know, like it's worth it more to me. But in general, those things are things that can build and build and build and build and build.
Mm-hmm.
And if they get away with taking the steak and there is no consequences, then they find out that no, I actually am just all talk. And you can have the steak if you can get it. Then it becomes that kind of game. Right? She's a good girl. So they're just deer. That's all. They're just deer. They're good things. Okay. So when she gets too focused, great thing to break intention. Because this kind of focus is not a normal balanced behavior. Now, if she's a hunting dog, you encourage that. But life is not going to become the situation where she needs to go out and hunt a deer.
I want to hunt them.
Right, and that's fine. Yeah, you
quiet.
Yeah, you need to be quiet so that they stick around. Right? And so but that's the point. This is like, so we're training to what life is going to be. But we're also, if I can get her to leave deer alone in the window and not focus on them like I'm doing currently, if I can actually get it done, if I can actually get it done and she learns to respect the idea that those deer are allowed to be out there, nope. So the word didn't get a response, then the correction. Now, had she stopped, no correction, because she always gets the opportunity, well, not always. It's a good thing for her to get the opportunity to know that the word nope happens, and then I can keep myself from getting corrected. That's fair. Like, that's being fair to the dog. That's being kind to the dog. Is because then the dog doesn't... Nope is not just the announcement that I'm about to hurt you.
It's going to be a correction.
Yeah. Nope is I'm trying to communicate something to you, and in respect for me, you might pay attention to it. Now, if you have no respect for me, don't pay attention to it, and then the consequence will come. Then the respect will come after that. Right? And so, and then hopefully we don't have to keep correcting you, because you realize that I am going to correct you. If I say an OPE and you don't quit doing whatever it is that you're doing, then it's coming. And it will come. Period. End of story. Like, no questions asked. Nope. Hey, nope.
There's going to be like 8 of them.
That's fine. Well, and that's what hopefully we get to the point where there can be 8 of them sitting out there. Hi. And she will pay attention, but she won't cause a ruckus. And she's not going to wake you up in the middle of the middle of your sleep time because there's deer out there or anything like that. You know, and then that's what we want. It's like to treat life as it actually is. You know, because those deer are not trespassers. So let's not treat. They're not criminals. Let's not treat them like criminals. You know. Now she doesn't understand that because they're prey to her in general, or they might even be threats to her in general in her mind. But they aren't either of those things in reality. So therefore, we don't allow her to continue to treat them like they are. And that's being a good leader. Right? That's helping her to have less anxiety, because she's just like, no, there's the deer. And I would rather them not be there. But my owner, my leader says that they're all right, so I guess they can stay. You know, and now I don't have to worry about it. Now I don't even have to protect from it. It's like, now there's deer out there. And if the deer are out there, then I know that there's not anything else lurking out there because the deer haven't run away.
Right.
You know, now they actually become a nice security thing for her. And she's just like, okay, well, as long as the deer are there, I can go to sleep. You know, if I wake up and the deer aren't there, then maybe I need to be on alert. But until then,
right,
all is well, right? Now you got anxiety dropping. So, yeah, these are all good things. So for the exercises, it's like, if I want to teach, like I want to teach the climb, you've already worked on it, so we can kind of go over it, is the very first thing that I do is I want to teach that this word means the action of jumping on this thing. And I do that by going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth 100 times, if necessary, of saying the word climb, and she jumps up here. Now, free. Now, the other thing I want to think about is I want to tell her to climb, and most of the time I would like for her to do it on her own, just no matter where I'm at, right? So if we're hanging out in the kitchen, and, you know, I know that somebody's coming to the front door, and I want to put my dog up on the climb and then stay there, then but I don't, you know, like I could walk them all the way over there, but if I really am doing my homework and everything, then I'll just go say climb. You know, like in my house, I say go to bed, and the dogs have their own individual bed.
right.
They're all stacked next to each other, and now they finally got to the point where they understand which one's theirs, because it's always the same one. And I send them from any point in the house. If I'm upstairs on the second floor and I say go to bed, and the dog will run down the steps, go around the corner and everything, and put themselves to bed. And that's what I want. But that doesn't happen overnight, and it's a build-up, it's a stretching process. So if I want her to understand that climb means get up here, I say climb, and then I lead her to the idea. And the easier it happens, the better. Fine. You know, and if she just loves the principle of it. Now, what I would do if I was not having conversations and I was a really good trainer, is I would free her up immediately. Because as she gets up here and jumps up here, I want to give her her reward, and then I want it to be done and over with. Because right now, I don't want her to have to contend with the idea of stay.
Right.
But I want her to keep hearing the word free right before she jumps off. Right? So I say free. And I lead her off the thing. And so that's repetition number 1. But, so now when I keep doing that over and over and over again, climb. Good girl. Free. I kind of make her get off. Climb. Good girl. Free. Now, climb. Good girl. So you see how in that 3 repetitions, the first one, I was here, the leash was here, there was like direction, I was all the way over here, I made it as easy as possible. Then what I want to do is I want to stretch that out. The second time I did it, we were all the way over here, and I started walking, but I stopped here, and she just continued the momentum until she got up there. And then the third time, I'm standing all the way over here, and I'm like, say the word, check and see if she does it, and if not, then I'm actually leading her over there, but I tried to stay as far away from it as possible.
Right.
Now that is a process that can be stretched over 50 repetitions, but the idea is still communicated. It's like I start by almost doing it completely for her, but each time she succeeds, and I let her know she's a good dog. And then I free her up immediately so that she can't make a mistake that I must correct her for.
Right.
Because if I don't correct her for stays up front, and then I start correcting her for stays later on and everything, then that's kind of not fair. But if I always say the word free immediately,
then she knows she's free of what
then
you're already doing.
well, she'll figure it out eventually that free means that she can get off of this thing. But if she hears it over and over again and still doesn't even understand what it means, and then one day I don't say free and she jumps off and she gets corrected for it, and I've said free the last 50 or 100 times, now she's gotten one correction that has a very obvious answer to it. I got corrected, and the only thing I can think of possibly that made the difference between me getting corrected this time and me jumping off the last 100 times and not getting corrected is that he always said the word free.
Right.
And this time he didn't. So maybe that's what I'm waiting for. And then the next time I tell her to get up there, and I start, giving her a little bit of an enticement, and she goes, "No, I think I want to try not responding to that."
Right.
And then I go, "Good girl, free," and then I let her up, and then she finds out that this is what we're talking about.
Right.
Right. But now we corrected her once, and taught a stay. Once.
Right.
And other trainers will correct them 50, 100 times. They'll start from the beginning by making stay part of the work. Or they'll start using the word stay and the dog just can't understand it because stay means sit in their mind.
Right.
Not stay doesn't mean cease to do anything else because you can't communicate that sort of thing to an animal in body language.
Good job.
Yeah, she's a good girl. Climb. Good girl. So you say
I
less
think
help,
she's getting
less.
tired.
Yeah, great.
She really acts like she's getting tired.
Yeah. Free. Good girl. Climb. Climb. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. So, like, save the walk
Mm-hmm.
and do these kind of things.
Right.
Because number one, it's exercising
It trains your
yourself.
brain.
It trains your brain to think in
It
these.
trains my brain.
But now we want her to stay up there, and the way you do that is by them there being a consequence for getting off beforehand. Now sometimes the consequence is I just put you back up there.
Right.
Like it doesn't necessarily have to be a stark consequence. Now with her being a bully breed, with that kind of disposition and everything like that, she's going to need some corrections, and don't feel bad about it because honestly, she is way happier feeling that you're invested enough to correct her for something than you just not at all, because then it's like, well, does this person actually like me, or are they just intimidated?
Right.
And so you get to know that. Sometimes when you're the leader, you don't actually know. Like whenever you are a dominant personality, you don't know if people actually like you at all. You're just like, no,
Right.
People always are nice to me. They always do the kind of things that I ask. They always follow my lead and everything like that. But I don't know how much they're cussing under their breath.
Right.
Right? Because they won't say anything back, even if
They're
they
just
disagree.
intimidated. Yeah.
Right? And it's like, so like am I a decent human being, or do I think I'm great and it turns out I'm a
Right,
nightmare?
and nobody will say anything because I'm a heathen.
Yeah, nobody will say because I'm a heathen, or because I'm
Right.
6'4" and I look like a Viking, or
Right.
something like that. Like that's the question. And so with animals, they don't actually want to be the dominant animal. They love to serve the dominant animal, and that's actually the best place to be is underneath really dominant animal. Because that's safest, securest, clearest, all of those things. So, like, if Mufasa is king, we're all happy, But when the Weasel Scar is king,
right?
Like, and it doesn't matter if it, it's it's exactly that, So free, good girl. Yeah, see, the last couple times she jumped up there and she kind of hit the end of the leash. She's starting to put the brakes on. Climb. Like, I don't understand why we're doing this over and over again. But so, whenever we want to build the actual stay, we increase distance, duration, difficulty, right?
Okay.
So the first time, like a lot of times whenever I'm doing that, I'll use food to do these sort of things. And what I'll do is I'll take like a half step back like this, and I'll go, good, and I'll give him a treat. And then I'll take another half step back, and I'll go, good, give him a treat. And I'll do that 10 times. The dog's like, this is the easiest game in the world.
Right.
Like, just stay here, cool. And then I'll stretch it out, and then I'll step back 2 steps. And I'll say, oh, good. I'll do that. And now this is the obnoxiously long method. Like, never do I actually do this, but it can be that much. And if you're starting like a brand new trainer or brand new to dog training at all, then a lot of times I'll do that.
Well, we've had all kinds of snow and
Right.
water since I got her, so stay has been one that she has had to learn.
Right. And so what I would do is I would just do away with it.
Okay.
It's not that you can't ever use it, but only use it when you really want to emphasize.
Okay.
In the meantime, I would just start making stay part of the routine.
Okay.
Like, it's part of the command. And you do that by making sure you free them when you don't want them to stay. So it's
Right.
really more of like
Free.
at the beginning when I give the command at all. Nope. Climb. Nope. 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 Climb. I did not realize that you did not know how to stay on your 4 feet.
Yeah, she's a bit clumsy.
Please don't put your head through the wall
It didn't hurt her.
at the
I
end of my
promise.
leash.
It did not hurt her.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
She
I'm not worried about that.
flies down that hallway and crashes into the washer and everything.
I specialize in pit bulls. I
She's
know it didn't
crazy.
hurt her. I mean, this
Her
right
dogging
here.
is fine.
So, but yeah, that's the thing. Now, you notice it didn't happen super quick that I got her back up there. But what did happen is I said nope right as soon as it happened, and then I continued to move and I continued to press until she's back up here. And as soon as she's back up here, it's over.
Right.
We're over it again. And I can pet you only one. I can love on you. That's fine because you're in the state, which the state is on.
Mm-hmm.
That's the state I'm addressing at this particular meeting. So I can pet the dog always while they're on the climb.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what state they're in. Now, it probably will also work on their state of mind and their energy level, so just be a little bit careful. If they're running
Right.
circles up here and I'm just loving on them, petting on them, going, oh, trainer said
That
it'll be
physical-
all right.
That physical
It's
touch
doing,
is
it's doing both.
right.
One for being on, and like 50%
One
of it's
for
for being
increasing
on, the other
her
one's for
energy.
being
Yeah.
rowdy,
Yeah.
right? So I just always try to pet calm energy. But, but as we'll stretch the distance, so eventually I would like to be able to get all the way to the end of the hallway. You know. Nope. Nope. So whenever it doesn't work, nope, climb. Nope, climb. When it doesn't work, take it back, do it again. Right? So if this is as far as I've stretched it, and she breaks, I'm going to put her back up there. I'm going to go this far again. I'm not going to go a little bit farther. I'm going to go back to where we failed again. And so she'll have 2 different things in her mind. He got that far away from me and I jumped off, and that earned me a correction and put back up. He did it again immediately afterwards, and no other factors have changed.
Right.
He goes back to the same spot and stops there, and I don't get off. And now he comes back and tells me I'm good, and he pets me. And then he'll free me off the thing. Free, good girl. Free, good girl. And so now we have 2, it's like a science experiment. We have 2 things that happen exactly the same way 2 times in a row. The only difference is the dog,
Right.
as the dog's my input. And my input changed and I got 2 completely different results.
Right.
So obviously that's how I produce those results in the future. He puts me up here on the climb. At least to that spot,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta stay on that thing. Now, if he turns around and goes into that room and everything, maybe I jump off and nothing happens. I'll give that a try later,
Right.
right? And so that means you, as the trainer, will absolutely go around the corner and be like, you
Right.
that kind of thing. And you
Right.
just start stretching out the distance.
Mm-hmm.
And the duration,
Good girl.
so like whenever I was training dogs at home, and I was actually taking them and training them, I would watch TV while I'm training the dog. Right? I would watch a program. I watch a whole movie eventually, and so the dog would come and stay with me. And the first time I go to have it do a climb stay, I'll generally teach it the climb itself.
Are you trying to hide?
Yeah. Now remember the space. Remember the space is respect.
Am I supposed to correct her?
If you want it always to be the
No.
rule,
Sit.
so until now, if you want,
Sit.
ask her to do that. Ask her to give you your space, and then invite her over to be in your space. That's perfectly fine. But if
Okay.
she just comes in on her
Yeah, I
own,
don't
and
want
she's
her
saying,
to just come
she's
up
saying, I own you,
and, right.
and you are mine,
No.
not the other way around, right? Like, I can lick you whenever I want. I can be on top of you whenever I want. I can do anything I want to you, and you just put up with it. That's the kind of thing. Now, it's not as overtly disrespectful as that. It's just not respectful.
Right.
It's not worth me paying attention to the idea that you might have your own feelings.
Right.
And that's not the way we raise our dogs. Because being empathetic to a child or an animal or any of these different things is not what teaches them empathy. What teaches them empathy is them being required to be empathetic to other people.
Right.
So it's the correction that comes from not using your empathy that actually produces empathy. It is learning to see life from the perspective of the pain that you will cause that causes empathy. So we don't. That's one of the tricky things. Is it's not like, and it's one of the tricky things, and very often for mothers and ladies and stuff like that, because you guys are kind of programmed to respond. If somebody needs something, you go do it, right? Because that's what keeps us all alive in that first 9 months, right? But sometimes after the fact, people think that's what produces an empathetic child, and it's not. Because the most empathetic children in the world are usually the ones that are neglected and abused. Right?
Mm-hmm.
People like thinking about that.
Right.
But the harshness,
no, it's the truth.
The harshness that you go through. Yeah, you go to an NA meeting, you'll find a whole bunch of empathy there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Now you go to people that need to be in an NA meeting, and you'll find the most lack of empathy because they've just been having the good times so far, and they haven't really hit bottom yet.
Right.
That's exactly why that works, right? So, remember why I was on that particular spiel. So, but anyway, yeah, the space. Like, you must give me respect, and then that teaches the empathy. And once you show the empathy, you show the respect and everything like that, then I will give you access.
Right.
I want you to have access.
Right.
I just I want.
It needs to be on mutual terms.
It needs to follow
my
the priority of you must be right before you get the things that you
right.
need. Right. If you get an inheritance while you still got a cocaine problem,
right,
it'll kill you. You know?
Right.
Right. It'll kill you.
Yeah.
Literally, you can't handle it. So we don't get the reward until we get the discipline. So that's it. That's all that is. So, but that's the hardest one to break. It's step one. Like, it's absolutely, and then probably the last step too, is just take your space, own your space, and make sure that the dog doesn't, like, even this is still a little bit much. Like, and when you're out there and you're out there in the world and the dog is doing this all the time, then that's saying, hey, I'm better than you, I'm stronger than you, I'm the capable one and everything, and I'm protecting you. I don't allow my dogs to protect me at all, because they don't need to be making those decisions, right? And it's not that I wouldn't have my dog protect me in the moment, but I definitely do not want them making that decision unless I've made the decision that this is what I want from you. Right? And so if you have a dog that possesses you and says that you're mine to protect and everything, then that is them saying, I'm better than you. I'm fully better than you, and that's just not the case. No dog is better than human by virtue of our brains. You know? I mean, like, I'm sure that there's some examples out there where a dog really should be in charge.
Right.
You know, and some dogs with a lot of training can be trained to be effectually in charge of certain things. I mean, like, I know how to train protection dogs, and if that's the case, then you can let the dog actually lead the person to a certain degree. You can send the dog out with the child, and the dog will not let anybody near that child, and that's great. But we don't start there, we finish there, right? And that's so we start with always owning that space. So, distance, we've talked about that. Duration, the first one I would do back whenever we had commercials, I would put them on a climb for a commercial break. And if the dog got out of the commercial break, then I would free them up, and I would be like, yeah, you're the greatest dog in the world.
I mean, I'm not a TV watcher, but it would be amazing to be able to do some of my floor exercises again without getting mauled.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
that would be one of those things.
Good.
So and make life easy for yourself. If you want to do exercises without getting mauled and everything, put the short leash like this underneath the leg of the table. Do your exercises.
Yeah,
and then they come and they're like, yeah.
Right. Well, I hate kenneling her because I work 6 days a week. She's kenneled while I'm at work 6 days a week. I don't want to kennel her while I'm home. You know, we have to be able to do all this stuff together.
The kennel is a tool.
Right.
It's also not a punishment.
Right.
This is their
and
safe
that's
space.
it. I don't want her to think it's a punishment to be in the kennel.
She will not. Yeah. She cannot. It's not in their programming. They will not think of it as a punishment. They will think of it as, sometimes they'll think of it as, I don't want to be here, but they will almost never go, I'm still in here because I'm bad. Because first of all, dogs don't understand bad.
Right.
They understand mom is displeased with me. That is something that we would call bad, but it's not bad. And the dogs do not have the mental, they do not have the hardware to deal with the idea of morality and morality in that sense of good and evil, right? So they don't think that. The kennel is no more a punishment than the tree is outside.
Right.
If they run into the tree, it still displeases them.
Yeah.
If the tree is blocking their view of the deer that they want to chase,
Right.
everything, the tree still displeases them, but they don't think, oh well, the tree's there because I'm bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that. The kennel's the same. It's just a factor of what's going on. Now, down the road, they'll find out that like I get to spend a lot more time out of the kennel in certain circumstances. But I really would not try to communicate anything with that, and I would not worry about communicating it that. What I would do is that we practice kennel for the sake of practicing kennel because it's a tool that we're going to need to use.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like my dogs, right now, they're in the kennel an absolutely inordinate amount of time. They don't care. Like it's not a problem to them because I've taught them from the beginning. I never let them assume that this had anything to do with anything aside from I need you in the kennel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the kennel was a good place. It's a place where you get your food. It's a place where you have a nice squishy place to lay and rest. And they still get to the point where they're like, I wish I wasn't in here, and they'll start whining. And then I'll either respond or I won't. Right? So be careful not to humanize the kennel process. So you can use the kennel, but in order to actually teach the lesson, if you have them on the leash and they're in a spot where if they come to bother you during this process, it causes an actual feedback for them to understand, then we're actually making progress. And you can make that progress while you're doing your workout without actually doing anything different than you would be doing normally. It's just because you tied the dog up and they're on their prong collar. Right? So use those things to our advantage. What I used to do is we would have a climb of whatever sort, and there we had little tie-outs on the wall that were bolted to the concrete wall, right? And we would hook the leash, a certain amount of leash, up to that thing, and I would practice walking away from that thing while the dog is sitting on the climb because the leash was exactly long enough where if the dog stepped off that platform at any point, then the leash would catch them either way. And then it only didn't whenever I came over there, untied and set free. Right? And so we would teach 10, 15-minute downstays on that climb by virtue of that. And there was no way of them failing. They couldn't fail. The program that I set up by tying them to the wall actually did it. Now, that being said, like we're constant supervision. We're not giving them the opportunity to cause themselves any harm or anything like that. And if they got to the point where they got to the edge and turned around and now their feet are off, I still have to go back and tell them, no, you need to be all the way on it.
Yeah.
But I could literally like leave the room and watch them through the crack of the door, and they think that I'm gone. And so we get this idea of like, if I put you up on this thing, even if I leave, you need to stay. Right? And when you're training competition dogs, it's necessary. Right? So we want to think about those kind of things. So setting with leash and collar, you can set a lot of things up to where it's like, no, I'm training even though I'm not actually participating. Like I'm not actually changing anything I'm doing. I just am setting it up to where the feedback is automatic. And you can do that. When you're sitting down eating, great time. Like if I'm eating, don't you dare be in my space.
If I'm eating, they're not even on the couch. They're either on there or on the floor.
Good. And that's fine. And now if that's a struggle, ensure that it's not a struggle. Because first of all, if you tie them to that leg again, you're doing them a service is because they can't actually get themselves in trouble. Like they can't do wrong. So you're helping them out in a certain regard, to a certain degree, but they're not. But then you get to eat your meal in peace as well. And if they are being still and quiet about it, you can either pet them as a matter of course, or...
What are you eating? You really are a toddler.
that you can either pet them as a matter of course, or they could earn a bite of your food.
Right.
You know, like I did that all the time. It's like if I went to eat and my dogs immediately went over to their climb and laid themselves down, by God, I'm giving them something nice.
Right.
And if they stayed till the end of it, I will save a choice piece of my steak to give to them. There's no problem with that. It's like I will pay for good behavior.
Right.
Like absolutely. And so that's the kind of things we want to think about. But other than that, nope. Good girl. What a good girl you are.
So you checked that? There was no body language cues.
Yeah, she was
But
just like
in a short period of time, and she literally went, ugh.
Yeah.
And spit it out. In the short period of time that we've been putting nope prior to some sort of a follow through, that word starts to mean something. And now I noped her, she fixed herself, and she got nothing but reward.
Right.
Just because of clarity of communication. That's the kind of thing. I mean, like that's what wins the day, and that's what develops. Nope. That's what develops a great relationship. And like here, it would have been easier for me to actually correct her, but I give her the opportunity, as a respect for her too.
Right.
But I give her the opportunity to express that I understand this, and whenever I see that she understands it over and over again, then we can do it. Now, enough times of me noping and she's spitting out the leash, she'll start to remember, hey, maybe I don't do that to start with, or she'll be like, all he's going to do is say nope, and then I'll spit it out. But until then, I'm going to chew on it. Then you need to start correcting. Like then it needs to actually cost them a little bit more, and eventually you get to the point.
Thinks it's a game?
Huh? Yeah, and that's where I'm saying is that if she gets to the point where she thinks it's a game, I grab it, he says nope, I spit it out, he pets me. You'll have dogs that are smart enough to deal with that. So at that point, you stop giving the warning. Because nope is a warning and a communication. And I can tell you, hey, don't assault me. And then you don't assault me, and I'm like, hey, thanks for that. Or I could assume that you know not to assault me, and if you go ahead and assault me, then I will protect myself.
Right.
And there'll be a consequence for assaulting me. So that's a
Right.
real extreme example of it. But the point is like sometimes it gets to the point where you've been informed. And now we're not waiting for you to play this game with me. Whenever the dog keeps getting on the thing and they keep on like stepping out and going and then you say no, and then they get back on there, and then you tell them they're a good dog, and they're like do it again, do it again, and then they're just screwing with you. It's like no, you having your foot off is wrong.
Right.
Nope means wrong, right? It doesn't mean you're bad. It just means you're wrong. And so if you continue to become wrong on purpose just to make life interesting, and then we're going to make it real interesting, and it's going to start being interesting in a negative way in proportion to the offense, in proportion to how much you're fighting doing the right thing, right? We always want to inform with these sort of things, not only what it is that we want, but how important it is. That's where don't jump on grandma, don't jump on humans. We don't go, oh, it just barely even bothers me, so I'm just going to gently push you down, which is really petting.
Right.
That's love and affection for a dog like this. Is like if I gently pushed her down, like honestly, the more gentle it is, the probably better it would work. Just because she doesn't want you to be gentle.
Right. She wants you to be rough.
But if I went boom and bumped her with my knee and everything, she'd go, F yeah, dude. Like that's awesome.
She'd be like game time.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and I was going to say, literally, to calm her down when I very first got her, that's what I would do. Because she would be jumping and crazy, and I'd be like, nope, we're not doing that. And I would just pick her up and hug her.
Right.
I'm like, we're not doing all the crazy. Calm down.
Right. Now, just to let you know, that is probably part of what made the crazy stick around. Because,
really? Oh, she thinks it's a reward.
Well, remember,
she gets attention from me when she does
you're
that.
You're giving her a subconscious brain chemical that is trying to produce whatever kind of energy she was having before all of that affection.
In order to me,
before all that affection. Because
that
hold didn't bother her.
Yeah.
Right? And so that if it doesn't bother her, then it is affection.
Right.
And if it is affection, it causes oxytocin, and oxytocin says, be like this more often.
Right.
So, because that's how you stay in the tribe, is by being calm. You know? Or some tribes, if you are violent, that's how you stay in the tribe, because that's what the culture is. right? Whatever you're culturally, hey. So if I want to correct for any of these things, like it needs to be an offensive behavior. Now, there are some dogs where holding them still is very offensive. She might be that, but sometimes, but she doesn't really seem to get too terribly offended by much. So yeah, that's definitely a good thing. And I'm trying to think of what we're difficulty, distance, duration. So do it 1 minute the first time, do it 3 minutes the second time, do it 10 minutes the third time, do it 40 minutes the second or the fourth time, and then do it for 2 hours the fifth time. And now in 5 repetitions, you've got a dog that stays for 2 hours.
Right.
You know, and if they fail, who cares?
Right.
Just get up, tell them no.
Put them back.
Mostly, yeah, if you just say nope and then put them back and everything, then they're just like, oh, well, shoot, that didn't work. And that's enough of a deterrent.
Right.
Now, if they're just like, then give them a little pop on the leash. Like, don't let them be irreverent or disrespectful or anything like that. Make sure that's important enough to them. But, yeah, in general, nope, and then run them back to the thing, climb, and then go back and sit on your spot and read your book or whatever. But don't get so into your book that you forget to be mindful of whether or not the dog's on the thing. Right? And that's the key. And then you've got a dog that can stay for 2 hours. You know? Then, so that's distance and duration. And after that, you got to do difficulty. That's whenever you're like, oh my gosh, it's a puppy! Good girl. That's very good. But anyway, that was going for broke right off the bat. But, you know, because I was right in her face, I was just far enough away where she needed to jump off to be able to see me and everything to interact with me. Good girl, you're so good. But you can start doing them, and like I would do. Nope. Climb. Now that caused her to fail, so I'm going to do exactly that again. Sorry. Good girl. There you go. And now, same situation. She offered a different response. This time it's a reward. Plain and simple. And so now eventually we want to get to the point where we're singing Rush in the kitchen while we're cooking dinner and everything, and she's on the thing because we know that she'll stay up there, and then we reward whenever it's possible. Now, don't start trying that until you believe that you're going to do it, and you also double check. You know, start looking out. When you get to the point where your dog can do a 2-hour climb stay,
I don't let her out of my sight because she walks by and grabs things off the shelves and chews on it, and she doesn't get out of my sight.
Right. Well, and so, but that's the deal, and that's good practice.
Right.
But we do want to start giving them more and more of their own, of them keeping control of themselves.
Right.
Right. And so now, if you have the opportunity to observe her from over on this side of the thing, and you also have the ability to use the NOPE marker when she goes to do something and she actually responds to it.
Go do it.
Yeah, because eventually, I mean, you start getting to the point where you can nope her away from her own toy, and it's that steady of a response because it has been nope, correction, and then you start stretching it out to where it's nope, you avoid doing the thing or you quit doing the thing, you drop the leash out of your mouth and you don't get the correction, and she starts dropping things before, just from the nope, and the nope has its proper meaning and everything, then you can start keeping an eye on her. Like, and this is all the way down the hallway, and so I can watch almost the entire house from this space.
Right. No,
aside from the
we
rooms.
play fetch down the hallway from there.
Right. And so but that's the idea, is that in that situation is like I can stand here and do the bills or whatever, and give her the opportunity to make mistakes.
Right.
And then when she goes to make a mistake, she's right here, and I go nope, and she goes, huh? What? What did my nope? Everything, and then, and then you're like, okay, well, you stopped, so that's fine. I'm leaving it alone, and everything, and then she comes back over to do it again. You nope her again. She's like, oh yeah, don't touch those antlers, because 2 times in a row, for 3 times in a row, I went to go grab antlers, and I was noped. And then one time she's going to be like, I don't know that I care.
I mean, I think I've told her no 832 times over that.
But is she
driftwood.
stopping?
She has stopped
Okay.
trying to get that piece of driftwood.
Well, so if it gets to the point that that's the case, and they keep on trying despite the fact that they know it's the wrong thing, then the consequence is not high enough.
Okay.
Then you get to the point of like, this is mine, to the point of, if you interact with it at all, there's a cost. Now, the other thing you can do prior to that is, instead of just noping them away from it, is that you actually go through with the claim, right? So the driftwood,
Oh, right.
right? The driftwood, and they're over here doing, sniffing up at it like this, is I'm going to come in and I'm going to be like, no.
Right.
This says to the dog very clearly, that thing's like, so if I'm doing that, right there,
Right. She
If
was
she
looking,
was
she was
focused-
looking at you.
if she was focused on this, and I stepped in and I said no, then they understand what that means. It's not like, and it's their language that we're speaking.
Right.
This is not them understanding our language. This is, we are actually coming and speaking Doganese to them.
I feel like she just looked at me like I hate you right now.
No.
That was my favorite game to play.
What? Oh,
The driftwood,
trying
yes.
to get the driftwood? Yeah. Well, yeah, sometimes we don't get to play our favorite games,
Right.
you know. My favorite game is called Drink the Beer. I don't play that game anymore. It's not good for me. So yeah, that's the idea. Is claiming things. You can claim all sorts of things. Literally, if all you ever did was get space respect from your dog, and then claim everything in your household that you don't want them messing with, and start teaching all of the rules through claiming practices. Like that's done. That's a done household. Like, it really is the end. That is an end product game right
The
there.
very first time I left her out was out of the kennel was when I went to church, and I came back and I had gotten a window bird feeder for them too, and she had pulled it down off of there and completely destroyed it, chewed it up, and chewed up a pair of my new house slippers.
Mhm.
So then the second time I left her out, I was just running to the grocery store or something, and I literally sat her on the floor and I was like, Zeta, all of these things are mine. These are your toys. Do not chew up my things. And I came back and it was fine. And I was just like,
Well,
really, Zeta?
I mean, it's not impossible that she
Right.
picked up on that, but it would not be probable that was what happened.
Right.
She might have just realized that you made a point.
I think
And she was just
I
like-
do tell her,
Mhm.
I want to leave you out of the kennel, but you have to not chew things up.
Okay.
You know?
So now here's the deal. When she's in the house, she's still in the kennel. If she's in that kennel, or she's in the kennel that is your front door and your back door and all of your windows, it's a kennel no matter what. And the dog doesn't really see it a huge amount differently. Now, when she's in that size of a kennel that's completely closed up that she can't get out of, nothing can get in either. So that kennel represents security and safety. And there's not a whole lot of unknowns about it. It's like, no, here I am. And as far as I can see, there's nothing in my vicinity, and nobody can get into this space. So that's 2 layers of security right there, and I can actually go to sleep. Whereas if you leave them out, I need to check all the windows all the time. I need to make sure that the next layer outside of my kennel, which is now your house, that there's nothing to be seen out there before I can go to sleep. And so your dog doesn't have the ability to actually relax as much when they're outside of their kennel. So the last time my dog was out of the kennel and messed with something inside of my house, I don't remember, because my dogs don't get outside of the kennel whenever I've left. They get put up every single time as a matter of course. They don't think anything of it.
Mm-hmm.
Not upset about it. It's just the rhythm of life. They're like, I just sleep on this nice cushion inside of my kennel whenever and then whenever they come back home, the cost I pay for that is they might have a little bit more gumption and energy and things of that nature, because they've been sleeping and resting really nicely, because they have no anxiety
Right.
because of their kennel.
We
And
can't do nice cushions in the kennel because Zeta eats them.
yeah, well, I mean, you can fix that in time too. Like if you have an e-collar and you have a camera, you can teach them to stop doing that. I mean, like it takes you a little bit of a while and everything, and you really kind of want to only put them in with it for certain periods of time when you can watch them. But
Right.
you absolutely can teach it. You can teach all sorts of stuff where you're not present and they still learn a lesson if you got an e-collar and a camera. You know, so whenever I was in dog training school, they would tell the story about back in the 70s. There was a gentleman who would potty train dogs for a living. He built two-way glass, right, and then had a teenager sitting on the other side of it and had e-collars, and they basically built a living room with carpet
Right.
and couches and all of the normal things, and let the dogs pee all over it. And then they put these dogs in there, and then whenever they would make a mistake, they'd get it correct. The person would come in there, run them out, take them to the potty, and everything, and they usually only correct the dog once or twice over the course of this 2-week stay. And then it really was just a whole bunch of sitting around watching the dog not peeing on stuff, you know. But he was making more money doing that than he did at his main job, which was a full-blown surgeon for a major hospital.
Oh, wow.
People would not even talk to the breeder about getting a dog until they had an appointment scheduled because he was booked 3 years out. That's how effective it was.
That's nuts.
He had such a reputation because his dogs came back. Like, the people didn't even take the dog until it went to potty training. Right? And so they would not even...
Some people are really spoiled.
Well, I mean, I think he was charging $700 a piece for it, and this was in the 70s.
Right, that was a lot.
So that's a lot of money and everything, but these people could afford it, and they're like, no, I could pay $700 to get this dog trained properly, or I could pay $2,000 to get a new carpet.
Right.
You know? And not to mention, the dog chewed on the couch. They would not be allowed to do that either, and all of these different things. And most of the time, the dogs, like, inside of a short order, I mean, like, they got nice couches to sleep on. They got good carpets and everything. They got fed 3 times a day and pottied 4 times a day and everything. They were living the life of Riley. Like, they were having a good time.
Right.
You know, they got played with and everything like that. They just could not make the mistake without getting the feedback. Because that's what we want to think about. The positives and the negatives are not good dog, bad dog. It's just feedback. It's not harm. It's just feedback. And whenever you think about it, and the same thing with our life. Like, if I do something and life gives me bad times, that's just good feedback. I know that whatever I did before that produced this thing, you know, like whenever the cops were outside in my front yard, that's feedback.
Right.
It's like, do I need to get mad at the cops? No, I really
No.
wasn't. You know, I wasn't
Right,
mad at them at all. It was like, it was more
totally self-induced.
I was more mad, which led me to the yard in the first place. You know, so. But that's the deal. It's like, and then I mean, on that last particular event, I'm just like, this is enough.
Right.
Like
you finally get sick of yourself.
I get tired of the things that I'm causing myself, and then you make some changes, right? And the dogs do exactly the same thing. So it's not abuse. It's not bad things for a dog to get feedback for what it is, and especially whenever it means that after they get the lesson learned, then you have the security of them knowing how life works, so they're not anxious, and then also not receiving any corrections for the next 12 years,
right? Because
they're trained, and so. I don't know. What are you doing there? Oh, you're so sweet. You're so sweet. Oh, yes, you are. Oh, yes, you are. So, that's the big thing. I'll see where we are on time. We still got about 40 minutes. So, it's kind of like, what do we want to address from here on out? You want to problem solve some specific things, you know. It's not a real great idea to start working with her.
Right, yeah, I don't want to start anything with her yet. I want to focus on...
Well, now, everything that I've taught you works with her, too.
Well, right.
But just keep in mind that everything that's going on with her is about... And I can talk you through that, because really that's the majority of what I do anyways, is I teach you the essence of what her problem is.
Right.
And what her problem is accurately identified as fear. Now, how do you fix fear becomes the next question, and that's actually where most people don't understand what to do with that. Because most people say, oh, you're afraid, let me make it better. which is the exact opposite of how they train us to be fearless in the military. Is how do they train us to not be afraid of bullets? Is they shoot bullets at us. Like they make us crawl here and they shoot them here, or at least that's what they tell us. You know, but I mean, like, bam, cow, loud noises, because the noise is all you're actually dealing with. It's just the noise. But they're shooting blanks and a handful of live rounds, and really they're doing it 25 foot above our heads and everything for safety and insurance purposes. But and then they're having us run through these obstacle courses and do high stress activities in the presence of the high stress stimulus, which is the gunfire. And then by the time we come down with it, we get down at the bottom and we actually stand around. Like they told me that the fastest people in the world made it through in like 10 minutes. And I made it through in 3. And I was not first at all. Like I was like number 5. And I made it through in 3 minutes. And so the 10 minutes was just nonsense. They just wanted me to not blow this off and not take it seriously. And I gave it everything I got. And like I said, it wasn't 10. It was, I said, I made it in 3, and I was like number 5 through the line. And then I stood around because some people still did take 25 minutes to get through because they had to overcome the fear in real time, right? And they had to deal with crawling in the sand and the muck and, you know, and swimming through the water and all these different obstacles that they have us do. And so I sat there and just relaxed inside of the gunfire. And by that time, I realized that the turret is way up there on top of this hill. But that's how you get over it. It's like you actually get over fear by exposing yourself to it, right? So if you want her to be not afraid of me, she gets more exposure to me, right? And if you want her to not be afraid of the deer and everything, as we take her around deer. You know, if you want her not to be afraid of other dogs,
she's not afraid of deer.
We take. I know that was just fill in the blank, whatever it is. So if you wanted to be dogs, it's like we need to go encounter dogs. But staying away from dogs and being protected from dogs will never get me over my fear. That all that does is just validates it that this fear that I have is rational. So we actually correct fear. People hate that idea, right? That's not a popular idea. Is that the proper way to deal with fear is actually to correct it. If it is irrational, if it's a rational fear, if somebody starts breaking in that door and my dog goes, oh, holy crap, what is going on? And they start acting in the manner of fear, everything is 0 chance I'm going to correct my dog. Because this is the thing to be concerned about. But thunderstorms, not at all. There's nothing wrong. Tornado, if the dog is scared in the middle while the tornado is going through this area, and everything like that, I'm going to comfort my dog, by God. Right? But if there's a thunderstorm out there, that's not what we do. Now, if there's a tornado going through here, I could also not comfort my dog. And then I might end up with a dog that whenever everything is hitting the fan, like I got a dog that will actually soldier up and be useful. Right? That's a matter of your own judgment. Right? And I'm not saying that needs to be done. I'm just saying that this is how the function works. If you want to get less afraid of something, you expose yourself to it, and you learn to stay calm in the presence of. Right? But we don't stay calm by somebody else calming us down. We stay calm by we getting corrected for we get a different kind of bad for not taking control of the bad that we're creating ourselves. Because when we're being panicky ourselves, like, don't get it twisted. We're doing it to ourselves. Now, a certain amount of it, we need to be trained not to respond that way. But, like, when you have anxiety issues and everything, and I have anxiety issues, so I'm not picking on anybody. But you can have anxiety issues, and then you can absolutely overcome them. Because you don't feed them. Right? And you learn and you go and willingly put yourself in anxious situations on purpose. Now, whenever I was in the hospital with my wife and everybody was dying and I had to fight off the evil spirits, as far as I'm concerned, that I cannot see, that was traumatic. And my stress is a little busted right now, and which is probably part of the reason why I haven't dove right into dealing with the aggressive dog.
Right.
You know,
No,
like
I get
the potential biter or whatever we want
Right.
to call it, is because my nerves are not recovered yet.
Right.
But now, I got bites. I got bites on me, and I got bit. The first time I got bit in the line of work, I got bit 3 times instead of 2 weeks. Right? Now, part of that is because number one, the bite did get in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And number 2, I didn't quit training because,
Right.
first of all, I had clients there that I already had at the house. Like they were on contract, so yeah,
Right.
I had to finish. And number 2, you don't get better by avoiding it. And I had another trainer on staff at the time, and I could have stepped completely away and been like, "Oh, I'm going to go take 6 weeks and recover, and you can handle it because I, brought you in from Kansas City, and I need to make sure that you're working and everything like that." That would have been a very reasonable thing for everybody to do, but I'm not do that, because I know how this works. It's like if I let the fear dictate my behavior, then the fear owns me.
Mm-hmm.
If I literally change my behavior
Because of the fear.
to resist the fear, then I own my fear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we need to think about whenever we're talking about the dogs. We're teaching our dogs free. Good job. We're teaching our dogs to own their own fear.
Good job.
Now, it doesn't mean they're not gonna have it. It just means that it's not gonna cause them to do erratic things. It's not gonna cause them to make mistakes. That they're going to make good decisions through fear, as opposed to letting fear make them make bad decisions.
Right.
And that's the game with a dog like her. And so if she's afraid of me, it's like, I'm going to come over here and spend time in her space.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and now I'm not going to do this because that's not helping her.
Right.
But I can come over here and be in her space. Get back.
Zeta.
No, she's fine. I will protect my own space for the time being because she, first of all, first example. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like I get to be first example. But also, I'm telling her right now that she doesn't get to own this dog either
Right.
in my presence. At least not in my presence.
Right. No,
Because if
I
she
literally-
continues to do what it is that we're talking about right now in solving her problems for her, she doesn't get better.
Right.
And now that can happen. Is you'll have a dog take on another dog and everything, and you've got the bulldog and the chihuahua situation going on.
No, she tries to own Nova. I literally spend my entire evening following her around, telling her not to be on top of Nova because Nova's getting irritated with her being in her bowl so much.
Well, and I don't have any problem with Nova fixing that problem either.
Well,
I understand.
I don't either, but I don't think Nova will. Like, she'll only do so much, and then Zeta makes her mad, and then Nova comes and hides behind me. Like, she's stopping her. Yes,
That's
she's
just a
literally...
good dog.
No, she's
So,
literally
yeah, and
stopping
that's-
herself.
In that situation,
Yes.
I absolutely would,
Like,
as the leader, protect the interest of
Yes,
the dog.
I've looked at Nova and gone, make her stop. You stop her.
Right. And so anyway, and that was just a caveat thing. It's like, it's not,
Right.
there's not a right or wrong answer. I mean, like, in general, on almost all situations, I think the owner, if you're the leader, it's your responsibility to ensure that everybody else around has the resources necessary, has the environment necessary to do a good job at what their job is, and their job is to behave.
Right.
Right? And so now if her job is to behave, and you allow another dog to jump all over, great. Like, stop. Don't prevent that from happening, and you're going to do a lot better with things. And that is the right thing to do anyway. And not to mention, that just tells your dog, like, I am a functional leader because I actually look after your interests. Hey. So when it gets to the point where you got some stupid happening, and especially you see how
Right. And
bought
that's...
into it she
Zeta.
was, and everything, I would absolutely jab a dog and everything. Because first of all, it didn't hurt her, but
Right.
it needs to be enough to where it actually makes a difference.
Right, and typically what I do in that situation, because it'll, like, Nova will be laying here on the couch, and Zeta will come right up to her and do that, and I'll come walk in between them and tell Zeta no. and give her a toy or something so
Don't
that
give her a
she'll,
toy.
so that she'll,
Yeah, but don't give her a toy.
no.
No, because that's payment. Because whatever you gave her that toy, which that toy is going to cause good positive brain chemicals, whichever ones it happens to be, whether it's your dopamine or your serotonin or your oxytocin or whatever. But if she goes and harasses the dog and you give her a reward for it, then she's going to do that over and over again.
Right.
So you tell her to go away, fine. I will probably say, given the fact that it's not going away, that we're not doing it with enough intensity. If you want to change behavior, you can do consistency or intensity, and somewhere along that spectrum, some
Right.
combination of the two. And the more you go over to intensity, generally the less consistent you have to be.
Right.
And now, that being said, if you go all the way over to gentle, no intensity, with 100% consistency, you still might not have. If you do absolutely nothing 100% of the time, you won't have the change of behavior.
Right.
There's some measure of intensity that's going to be required no matter what, and it's going to be whatever is more negative than it is positive to do the action. Right? If I'm trying to do an action and it's worth $10 to me, you can't give me $5 to not do it.
Right.
Because I could just go do it in like 10.
Right.
Right? And so, it's like a 50-cent speeding ticket. It's like, dude, pay it all day. It costs me a lot more to be late. Right? So, you might have a certain amount of intensity that needs to up. And especially whenever it comes to things that could potentially lead to an eruption of violence.
Right.
Especially from a dog we know that has violence in their repertoire, then I would much rather be firmer, less often. It's
Okay.
like, do not do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
More of that type of energy and I'm not saying that you're not doing that. That would be my
I'm
prescription.
probably not being that aggressive.
I kind of get a feeling that maybe you weren't, but you have. Well, almost everybody.
I'm too tired to be aggressive for real.
Well, and that's why you have the tools. So you notice how much trouble it's caused for her to have a leash on in the house thus far.
Right.
0.
Right. Well, and for the first 2 weeks that I had her, I left her leash on her. I never took it off.
Well, and if that's something that you can tolerate, but here's the deal. Until a dog has all of the behaviors with a good 95% consistency that I want, and it is no longer an imposition for me to enforce them without a leash, I will leave a leash on. I mean, and whenever I get a dog, that's exactly my very first protocol, is I put a leash on them, and then I leave it on them. I almost always drop it, because I would much rather get access like this, or walk over and step on it, take my time getting what it is that I want. Taking your time getting things what you want just makes you look even more dominant. You don't have to struggle to get what you want, and you can do it calmly without getting any upset and everything, then you're way more dominant than the one who has to scream and fight and throw a fit, right? I mean, if I have to hire 600 people and 75 machines and everything to take down a mountain, or I walk up to it and I say, excuse me.
Right.
And in both situations result in the mountain moving, which one of those two people is more dominant? That's the answer.
Right.
You get it. So yeah, take the leash, leave it on, drop it. Now, make sure that she has learned right away not to chew the leash.
Right. Yeah, because mine's different.
So the first lesson is teach you not to chew the leash. The second lesson is use the leash all day long, every day, until it gets redundant that it's even on.
Right.
And then, but if you're having behavior issues, it's no longer redundant.
It's not right.
It's just 100%, and it doesn't matter if you had the dog for 4 years, 10 years. If the dog's having a behavior issue, put a leash on it, and make sure that you supervise it enough to catch it in the act of doing whatever it is that it's doing wrong. And if it's one of those things that only happens when you're gone, you either A, don't give them access by putting them up whenever you leave, or B, get your camera out and your e-collar and fix it the quick way. And the quick way is absolutely effective, and it really is very fair. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you're watching them through cameras and shocking them from a different room and everything. It's like, no, that's called an environmental correction.
Right.
If the beehive always stings the animal, then the animal doesn't mess with the beehive, and it doesn't matter if there's a human present to tell them not to do it.
Right.
You know,
But if they're
if
doing
the
specific
if the
behavior
creek always
because
has
you're
icy
leaving-
cold water in it, and you fall in, and it just about kills you every time,
Right.
and everything, no human needs to tell you that that's wrong. This is just called regular old environmental information. Now you can manufacture that by making it by using technology. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
There's not anything wrong with that at all, because whether this is where this is where the atheists really like have fun with this, because this is essentially when you get that atheist that is just like, no, let's let the Christians have their God because it keeps them behaving.
Oh yeah.
Right, and I don't agree with that in any way, shape, or form. However, there's other peoples out there that have a God that I don't believe in, and they still sometimes behave
Right.
pretty well. And that is an example of what I'm talking about. So it really just depends on who you're talking to on whether or not I'm offended, and that's fine. I don't really care one way or the other. I'm very happy for dumb people to be dumb, you know. But the deal with the dogs is like, in the Greek, when they use the word God in the Bible in the Greek, it referred to somebody who was so far above that you could not achieve it. So they did consider the Pharaoh, the Greeks, even though they weren't Egyptian, would consider the Pharaoh potentially even a god. And same thing with all of the different characters and everything. And what I would consider the great men of renown that is talked about in Genesis. The point being is like those people were considered. There were people that were considered gods, and that's because they had achieved something that nobody was going to be able to achieve. Now we actually are that to a dog, because we do have 2 extra layers of brain. We have thumbs. We have all sorts of these advantages, and the dog will never be able to do what it is that we can do.
Nope.
And so we can be the god to the dog, and that's okay. Like, that's absolutely fine. We were given dominion over all the animals right at the beginning. So that's the point I'm getting at. And so if we end up doing things that would be considered like unexplainable magic, spooky to the dog,
Right.
and everything like that, as long as they're understandable and consistent, then it's fair game.
Right.
Now, if we're just randomly zapping our dog for no reason whatsoever and everything, then that's full-on abuse.
Yeah.
Right? But the fact that the dog can't see us whenever it gets corrected and everything does not denote any sort of wrongdoing on the part of the trainer.
I put
whatsoever.
a collar on her, and just when you turn it on, it beeps. She hears the beep, and she's like, "What do you want me to do? I'm listening. I'm paying attention."
Well, and
because she knows that I don't a lot, but I will if I have to.
Right. Yeah. So now, as far as that's concerned, when I have a collar that beeps or vibrates or does any number of these different non-corrective things, because you don't get twisted, they're not corrections.
Right.
The fact that a correction would come next is still fine to do. If you want to use the beep or the vibration or anything like that as the warning,
And
like
that's
now,
what it is.
I'm telling you that now I'm telling you with this beep that the next step is a correction.
Right.
If you don't fix yourself, then that's just a negative marker. Fair game, go ahead and do it. A lot of the things that I'm bound to use e-collars for are things that don't necessarily need a warning to start with, because we already discussed the idea that warnings aren't necessarily always a good thing to do.
Right.
Sometimes they're a bad thing to do. If the dog can't handle, hey, don't chew my leash. Like chewing the leash doesn't really need a warning.
Right.
It's like, honestly, if I just
It's
corrected the
been
dog.
covered enough.
Yeah. Hey, no. If I corrected the dog firmly enough once, for them doing it, then they go, wait a minute, all I did was just chew those. No, hey. Then it will break the behavior. You know, and that's breaking the dog. And that's a particular strategy.
Right.
I don't necessarily advise it on anybody or anything necessarily, but I don't not advise it either. It's just a choice that you have to make.
Right.
But we were talking about, but generally what I do is I still use my verbal marker that is always the same all the time to get the dog's attention whenever, you know, if instead of the beep, I say nope, and the dog
Right.
goes like this and still fixes the behavior, keeping that negative marker consistent,
Right.
slightly advantageous.
More effective.
Slightly advantageous, not a ton, but a little bit. And then what that does leave me to do is that I can make the beep or the vibration or the light or whatever, I can make those commands. So when I have a vibration function on my collar, it is a recall 100% of the time for me. You know, and so if I vibrate it, that means if I don't even know where you're at, you need to come find me, right? And so I lived on a 90-acre farm, and I actually could keep all 7 of my dogs in the vicinity. They could still go out onto the farm and do their thing, but they needed to stay within a certain amount of distance. Because, it wasn't like a perimeter where I just correct them afterwards, but I had the vibration that they had already been taught means come, and I had 3/4 of a mile range on the collar, and so I vibrated, and I'd wait for 30 seconds, and if I'm not seeing the dogs coming quickly to the house, then they get a correction, and I vibrate again, and I'd wait another 20 seconds, correction, vibrate, everything, until you leave her alone.
I'm sorry.
But so that's an option. Now a lot of times when people start with the collar first, they do things on their own and everything, then it starts making things confusing. So sometimes you stick with what you've already done, as long as there's no problem, which there is. If you want to use the beep as a negative marker,
Right.
all it's doing is just losing that one really fancy functionality if you chose to do that differently later on down the road.
Right.
And in which case you get you some different collar and it makes a different noise or whatever, and you've got the same thing.
Yeah.
So, what else we want to talk about? What sort of? So, I'm happy.
Me being consistent. Nope.
Yeah. So your general things to work on right now: personal space, and this knuckle in your hand, right here on this squishy part of the chest and everything, is a wonderful deterrent. Hey, come here. You don't need to be there without us.
Nope.
Is a great deterrent from these sort of things because it's just, it's just unpleasant enough to where they'll actually get a response from it.
Right.
But it's not going to do any damage. You're never going to hurt your dog. You would hurt your finger quicker than you're going to hurt that. You're going to hurt that dog.
She's much tougher than I am.
Yeah, well, you're not. That's why you're not hitting her. You're just pushing her away with it.
Right.
Now, with a lot of dogs, I suggest 2 fingers, and especially like up underneath in the neck. There's a little deep spot in their neck. Everything is a great place to put 2 fingers and push in because they don't have anything to damage right there. But it's smarts. Like pushing your collar, it's smarts. You don't want it. But it never is really going to hurt the dog, and it's not going to cause any damage. So I do advise that. But when you have a dog as dense as that and everything, a lot of times I suggest the knuckle because this in meat has an effect. Whereas you poke your fingers, it just kind of rolls to one side or the other, or you
it's gonna hurt
bend your finger and you hurt yourself. So I would much rather you support it like that. And so that's a good thing to do. You can get a stick, but she doesn't care.
No, she don't
Really? Now, if my stick was only this long and everything, and I used it more like a baton, like one of those police batons, and I had a little bit more, I was a little more adept with it than I am with this one, then that would work fine. Or you have something like this and you get after them a little bit with it once or twice. You know, and then they realize that this thing is no longer my friend.
Right.
They'll treat it with more respect, and then this is something to respect. You know?
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with the implements doing discipline. There's a benefit to that. It's an old school way of thinking. A lot of people don't like it, and that's fine. I totally respect that. But psychologically, scientifically, it is easier for the animal to think of this as the thing that disciplined me, as opposed to the person who's holding it. This thing needs discipline. Mom doesn't. Mom is not disciplined. Mom is not the one who gets after me. It's not about that. Like, mom in combination with the stick means discipline.
Right.
But the stick by itself means discipline, because somebody else comes in and the stick means discipline. Everything, it becomes something you can hand off, and you can say, "Here, lead the dog." You know, and then you give it to the kid who's 2 years old, and the dog minds the kid because the kid holds the scepter.
Right.
You know, this is Moses' staff. You know, like it is a real thing. I mean, like over all of time, this has been used. So it is symbols of authority, but it doesn't. It's not the person. So they don't get that sort of like
that negative stigma about an individual.
It's when the paddle used to hang on the wall. Like we didn't
We
go, oh my gosh, grandma's abusive. We said, I don't want the paddle.
Ours was named Mr. Remember.
Absolutely. And that's the deal. And that was a functional thing. And you can say, people can think however they want to think about it and everything, that's their right to do so. But functionally, I don't hardly even remember the people who did the applying of the correction whenever an implement was used for it.
Right.
You know, I love my mother. She did tell me to pick the switch.
Right.
Right. And what did I have negative feelings towards? The switch.
Yeah.
Not my mother. Right. And that's just part of what that is. And so there's a lot of people you're not going to convince of that these days, but you know. You make your own decisions. You don't have to announce what they are on camera. So, right? So, So taking your personal space. That's the big one. When in conjunction with taking your personal space, we are taking space at the door.
Yes.
Doors. Free is the thing that lets you out the door. Right. There's nothing wrong. First thing in the morning, whenever you're drowsy, is to say free as you open the door, and the dog goes through. But I want you to interject. From time to time, the idea of like, I'm going to start to open the door, and whenever they go through, it's nope. And now, don't lose that battle.
Right.
Hold the door. Win that battle. But,
otherwise it's going to build her confidence in taking the door.
And that's where the answer becomes, scoop into the door and address the dog this way. And I open the door from behind me. And now here,
so
this is a winnable battle because the door is open, but here I stand.
Right.
And if they try to go between my legs and everything, then we're gonna pinch a head, and then the dog will fight its way backwards, and then I'll just look at him like, "Oh, that was a bad idea, wasn't it?"
Right.
And I don't get mad or anything like that. But you own that space, and it's not that you can't have the convenience of it being basically automatically like when we're going out to the backyard, you just go out to the backyard, and now you can also set the rule to where like first time in the morning I don't ask for a free. We're going outside. I open the door and say get out of here. You know, like
well,
that's
and
fine.
like the back door, I'm okay with them just going out the back door because it's fenced.
And if that's going to be the case,
but
if
that's what I'm
gonna be the
asking
case,
is, should I make it a difference or should I just make?
So here's the way that I think about it. If I lead you through the door, if I lead you through the door and I don't tell you nope, then come on, right? Generally, with my dogs, nope means you're not going through the door. And if I don't say nope, and I've already said something like "come on" or "walk" or "hey, do you want to go outside?" Which I will say, and then I'll go wait at the door. It's basically there's not a right or wrong answer. It's just whatever it is that you expect, make that the rule. You know, if the rule is like I open the door and I haven't told you no, you didn't go through the door, then sure, fine. You know, like let that be the rule. Whatever you want the rule to be, you make the rule. And I teach you just how to set rules and keep them. I don't need to tell you necessarily what the rule needs to be.
Right.
So if the rule wants to be because it is convenient for you who pays the bills, then I open this back door and the dogs just get to go through, then great. Then just set that, make it the case. You know, if the rule is also that you never, ever, ever, ever go through that front door unless I have given you a specific word of free to go through the front door, like while I'm pointing out the door, then that can also be the case. And both things can be happening simultaneously.
Okay.
And so now it could be the same thing for both doors. It could be different. You know, it could be the opposite thing for both doors. It's just whatever it is that you want it to be. But I want you to decide it, and I wanted you to make it the rule, and I want you to make it always the case to the best of your ability. Now, the rule can also be, if I say nope, I've just instructed you thusly.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then
that's
like,
probably
if the door
that's
opens,
probably the better of the options. Just
it's really good for the mobility. Now, what it doesn't do is like sometimes if you are never allowed to go through the front door without a free, sometimes the front door blows open while you're at work and you come home and find your dog sitting in the front door, not going through. And that has happened. I know about it. I've seen similar things happen with my own client dogs. They're never allowed to go out into the street unless somebody has given them the word free or given them a command of walk or something like that. I had a little mini Aussie that I literally was there and she was playing fetch with the ball, which she does all the time, favorite thing to do. And the ball, she just missed being able to catch up with it by the time she went to the street. And that ball went out and rolled underneath a moving car. And the dog stopped and turned around and looked at Dad because of the consistency.
right.
So the dog's life was legitimately saved. And my buddy was just like, yep, that's the way we got it. You know, like that's how it is.
Right.
You know, like we were doing the work, you know, because I was there on a social visit, you know, but I think in that instance that I was talking to him, I think where he had just told me about Instacart and you can make money on it, you know, and everything, how long ago this was. And I was just dropping by because I was in the area. But yeah, it works. But if you do specific instructions per each, then that obliges you to be a constantly and perpetually instructive owner whenever it comes to doors. So you don't get the benefit of having a static. Hey.
She's looking at the door. She thinks she hears something outside.
Having a static rule.
I think she.
So now, here's what we do with that. If she is griping about the door, hey, nope. Like, thank you for alerting me. I'm mad at you for that.
Right.
But what's going to happen is that I, the big powerful one, the one who makes all the good decisions and has all the brain power and who also, you know, may or may not be carrying weapons, who is really actually capable of defending the place, gets to go over here and I will take care of that for you. I'm not going to leave you anxious. And then I can come over here and I can look. Did I just jump?
Yeah.
I think I thought I saw something glaring. Wow, that's funny. Anyway, so now you see, I jumped and I just absolutely screwed the dog over by jumping. Man, that's embarrassing. Go on. Hey, go. Now, in the event that she thinks that I jumped because something was legitimately out there,
Right.
And she's like, no, I'll go take care of it for you and everything. Whenever I turn around and I point her off and I turn my back to that, that doesn't always have to mean it's mine. It could also mean I'm not worried about it. Because animals do not turn their back on animals.
Right.
On things that they're afraid of in nature. It does not happen.
Right.
So if I turn my back on something, she assumes that I'm just a normal animal, and I won't do that. And if I'm the big tough guy in most situations, then she goes, okay, well, if that guy is not concerned about it, then I should not be either. Now, also, if I'm not the big tough guy, and I have enough confidence to turn my back on it, then generally that dog doesn't need to. That's where your kid disregarding something, the dog is going to be like, oh, I guess that they're friendly with that, whatever that is, you know. And then unless it comes and tries to hurt them, that was funny, man. I don't even know
I'm very
why.
sad that the camera was facing
Yeah,
the hallway.
dude, I really wish that it had.
I wish it would have caught.
Like I got myself getting attacked by a dog on camera. I'm not afraid to show my mistake. But yeah, that was weird. Again, nerves are still up from the hospital.
Right, your nerves are still off, and you're not used to the. I mean, there's a lot going on out there.
There was a strange glare, and I think that I was not
the shop light.
keeping myself in like which direction the road was going, and I think it was. I think it just didn't look the way that I expected it to.
The porch light and the shop light makes that area weird.
Well, whatever. It's typically not the case, but you know what? Everybody's human. Sometimes we have our moments. And I'd tell you what, if I was at home and this anxiety was coming on, like, first of all, my dogs would be hyper aware of it. So keep that in mind. If you have anxiety situations and everything, the very best solution is to like own that crap in front of your dogs and conquer it in their presence so that they can see that even when you are anxious, you still are in control and there's nothing wrong just because if something's going on with mom and everything, that's for her to worry about because she can take care of everything else.
Part of the reason I started hiking was because I was a committee person at GM and the mental strain.
Right.
I needed something physical to do when I left that building to not run my own brain ragged.
Absolutely.
So we would go hike like 3 or 4 miles every morning after I got off work.
Well, and the endorphins that your body produces, those are painkillers.
Oh, absolutely.
And so people take painkillers for anxiety all the time. You know, like I'm very certain that both of us.
That's a terrible idea.
No, it is a terrible idea, but it is a function of painkillers is they will reduce your anxiety. It's like if there are people that, you know, like will take heroin.
Right.
Because they are overwhelmed with life. And it works just fine. And it's technically a painkiller, but I mean, like, they're not worried anymore.
It doesn't really work.
Right. They're not worried for the moment.
Right.
Right?
No.
And so the point I'm making is that animals have always used endorphins as painkillers because that's what they're built for. You know, and they've used them for anxiety things. That's what pacing is. Pacing is literally you drugging yourself out of your anxiety.
Right.
It doesn't work very well, but they do it.
Right. No, there's literally times where I'll be like wandering around the house and not really doing anything, and I'm like, okay, what are we doing, brain? What do we need to focus on? Because we're avoiding something.
Yeah. But now, the reason we have endorphins is actually to keep ourselves. Because every time our muscle.
No, not on me. Thank you.
Every time our muscle contracts, everything it actually causes little toxins and stresses and strains and tears and everything like that. So if we need to go out and run a certain amount of mileage or we need to fight or something like that and we need to do extreme muscular usage, our body releases painkillers so that we don't feel that pain until afterwards, and that's why you don't get sore till later.
Right.
Because you're actually technically sore in the moment.
Right.
As you've done it. You just, the endorphins won't wear off for a while. And they last for a good long while. So the walking is good. It's good for anxiety. It's good for shutting the brain down and getting out of that state of mind.
This is my cushion.
So we can know that for the dog's sake as well. You know, it's like, first of all, watch out whenever they're just drugging themselves. You know, whenever they're doing like she does.
Right.
And she runs around and just does crap. Just stuff.
Right.
All the time. This is because she's trying to get some good brain chemicals. You know, and so it might be one of those things where we start taxing the mind a little bit because she's bored or she's restless or any of those different things. But that's just part of the day-to-day maintenance game.
Right.
It's not really what we're talking about right now, although it could be.
Right.
The most strenuous thing for any dog in the world that doesn't want to is to be still. And so if you have a situation where you have a little leash like this and everything, and you give them that much leash, and you step on the rest of it, and it's your options are lay down or pull your head off.
Right.
Like there's not a lot of choices and everything, and so you'll just lay down, and you just will. And yes, is it the most wonderful thing in the world? No, but but also living with the lack of self-control. Because eventually, despite the fact that they have no option, doesn't mean that they're not still controlling themselves.
Right.
Because the leash is this long, and they could be holding themselves at the end of it, in which case I would not consider them controlling themselves. But if they find the spot where they can relax inside of that space, and not flip out or roll around or get distracted or jump at every whim or anything like that, then they have it. And so it's the same thing as whenever they tie a horse to a post. You know, like they'll do that with break horses and everything. They'll tie them to a post, and it's literally like some people get real stirred up about that too. It's like you're just giving them the opportunity to learn self-control.
Right.
Because there's a consequence for not. There is a reward for surrender. You know, it's the same thing as when they put them on the lead line and everything, and they run them in circles. The lunch line for, you know, they run them in circles for 15 minutes and everything like that. Eventually they get to the point where they surrender. And once the horse surrenders to the person and everything, then a great relationship can be built, and everybody can live, you know, they can have a heroic story.
Right.
Prior to that, it's just a horror story.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the Revenant with the bear.
Right.
That's an unbroken animal and everything. And so, but people don't want to think about the idea of getting an animal to surrender as a beneficial thing. But like, you talk to anybody who's ever overcome anything, ever, it involves some measure of surrender, and surrender is almost always the way that gets them there. You just got to figure out what that looks like and what it means and where you got to aim it. But you got to surrender to something in almost every single circumstance in almost every part of your life. So the United States